Hey guys, tonight we're diving deep into the cracked leather boots, dust-choked trails and blood-stained dollar signs of something truly unhinged. Wild West bounty hunting. This was not your average game of cat and mouse. No, this was desperation meeting desperation. Guns drawn, no rules, no backup, and half the time, no clue who was hunting who. You think you've had a rough week? Try chasing a horse thief across Apache territory, with nothing but a rusty revolver, a name scratched into bark, and the promise of $15 if you survive. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I want to know which part of the world is losing sleep over 19th century bounty chaos. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing just outside a creaking saloon door in 1871, your boots barely clinging to the porch as sweat beads down your neck. The paper in your hand is trembling. Not from fear, exactly, but from heat, fatigue, and that tiny itch of excitement. It's a wanted poster. Smudged ink, badly drawn face, probably exaggerated nose. Dead or alive, it reads. Beneath, a reward, $200. In today's money, that's like pocketing over $4,000. For one man, one trigger pull, maybe two if he runs. This is bounty hunting frontier style, a legal grey zone painted in blood and gunpowder, where justice is whatever you can carry out in your saddlebag. You've got no badge, no backup, no guarantees, just grit, a six-shooter, and the sense that maybe, just maybe, you can stay alive long enough to collect the reward before someone does the same to you. You hear stories, half bragging, half eulogy, about other bounty men. One fella brought in a gang of rustlers hog-tied to his wagon, minus a few fingers each. Another shot his mark from a church steeple 2 towns over. And then there are the ones they don't talk about, the ones who vanished into the rocks, bled out in desert creeks, or got outplayed by someone faster, smarter, or more desperate. The West right now isn't just untamed, it's starving for justice, or something that vaguely resembles it. Local sheriffs are either overwhelmed or in on the crime. Law enforcement is a loose patchwork of self-appointed posses and burned-out Civil War veterans trying to find a new kind of war to fight. Which means if you're brave enough, or reckless enough, you can make your own rules. That's where you come in. You ride alone mostly. Trust is in short supply. The only thing thinner than the local law is the paper that bounty posters are printed on. Towns are miles apart and word spreads slower than a sick mule. That means every time you see a poster nailed to a saloon post or hung up at the general store, you've got to do some guesswork. Is it fresh? Is the fugitive still nearby? And more importantly, are you the only one tracking him? You pass through Deadwood, where the sheriff's too drunk to even stand most afternoons. He waves off your questions about a man named Lyle Two Ears Harper. Yeah, apparently he earned the nickname after collecting some trophies off his rivals. You learn more about Lyle from a toothless piano player than the actual lawman. According to the old man, Lyle's holed up near the cliffs just north of the canyon. Real slippery terrain. Perfect for ambushes. But hey, you came this far. You ride out at dawn, wind biting your face, the landscape opening up into raw, cracked earth. You carry a lever-action rifle across your saddle, a Colt Peacemaker on your hip, and a rope slung across your back. The wanted poster flutters in your coat pocket, whispering like a ghost. You don't know what Lyle looks like in real life. Just a sketch. Could be anyone. Could even be you on the next poster if you screw this up. The trail's cold at first. Hoofprints that go nowhere. Boot tracks that vanish at the creek. You circle around, try to think like a man running from death with a bounty on his head. Would you hide in the open, pretending to be a ranch hand? Or would you dig in deep, wait for the hunter to get close, and then strike like a cornered rattlesnake? By noon, you spot smoke. Faint, but there. A campfire. You dismount quietly, every inch of your body screaming with tension. Rifle ready. You move low, slow, real slow. Behind a rock you see him, alone, eating beans from a can. Two Ears himself, maybe. He's got a shotgun nearby, but he hasn't spotted you. Yet. You think about it. Just pull the trigger. One clean shot and you've got yourself $200. Maybe even a bonus if you bring him in breathing. But what if you're wrong? What if this guy's just a drifter with the worst luck in the world? Then he moves, and you see it, a scar down his jaw. Just like the poster said, it is him. The standoff lasts 3 seconds. You shout. He reaches. You shoot. The rifle kicks hard. He crumples over. Not dead, but close. You tie him up, patch his leg, and haul him onto your horse like a sack of grain. The ride back is long and awkward. He mutters threats, laughs, calls you names that shouldn't be repeated with the lights on. But he's yours now. You hand him over to the jail in a town called Bitter Gulch. Sheriff barely looks up from his poker game, but he signs your chit. $200 in coin, heavy bag. You walk out with your belt clinking like a Christmas tree. But here's the thing no one tells you about bounty hunting out west. You don't sleep easy after. Your name gets around. Fast. You become the new target. Some folks don't like you cashing in on misery. Others just want your coin. And 2 ears? He's got brothers. The madness has only begun. $200 feels heavier than it should. You carry the coin in a canvas bag tied tight to your belt, walking out of Bitter Gulch with eyes on your back. Every saloon door creaks louder now. Every stranger's glance lasts a second too long. You're not just a bounty hunter anymore. You're a marked man who just made an enemy of a family known for cutting ears off people they liked. And 2 ears Harper, he has 2 brothers still breathing. Probably 3 if you count the one everyone swears is a ghost, or a preacher, or both. You mount up, ride slow, and don't look back until the town shrinks into nothing but dust and vague memory. That money is burning a hole in your pocket, but you're smart enough not to flash it all at once. You split it, some tucked into your boot, some sewn into your saddlebag lining. The rest you stash in a rotted-out tree stump a mile outside town. No one robs a man who doesn't look rich. At least, that's the idea. You camp that night under a scrap of canvas near the river. Fire low, horse tied, boots off but revolver close. You're not relaxed, just pretending. Your ears prick at every coyote howl, every owl hoot. Your nerves are fried. You dream about 2 ears rising up in the jail cell, picking the lock with his fingernails, gunning for you with a stolen badge and your own bullets. Morning comes like a slap. You wake with your back screaming and your mouth full of dust. Coffee tastes like burnt water, but you're alive. Another day on the edge of the law. And wouldn't you know it, someone's nailed up a fresh poster at the next town. This one reads, James Spider Callahan. Horse theft, arson, attempted murder. Dead or alive. Reward, $500. $500. That's not a reward, it's an invitation to chaos. Every bounty hunter from Arizona to Nebraska is going to smell that ink. You stare at the poster and feel your pulse kick up. Spider Callahan isn't just some small-time thief, he's a legend. Some say he robbed the same train twice in one night. Others say he set an entire town ablaze just to fake his own death. Half the tales are lies, sure, but the other half, well, they're worse. The thing is, Spider doesn't just run. He hunts back. You've heard stories. One bounty hunter found strung up outside his own tent with a playing card pinned to his chest. Another poisoned in a brothel after bragging too loud. The man plays dirty, unpredictable, and with a kind of twisted genius that makes your gut twist. But $500, that kind of money changes things. You could buy land, get out, build a place with an actual roof and 4 walls, maybe even sleep more than 2 hours a night without checking for shadows, so you start asking around. Quietly, nothing too obvious. Just a few questions in the saloon. Some coins slipped to a stable hand. You learn that Spider was last seen heading toward Devil's Backbone, a stretch of cliff so ragged and remote most folks won't ride past sundown. Perfect place to vanish, or set a trap. You gather supplies, double-check your ammo. This time, you bring extra rope. You also visit a blacksmith who sells you a strange contraption, a metal snare that snaps shut like a bear trap, but small enough for a human ankle. Brutal, but effective. He says a bounty hunter named Brigg used one last month. Brought in 2 brothers who tried to kill him in his sleep. Brigg didn't even break a sweat. Of course, he also lost 3 toes last winter to frostbite, so not exactly a glowing endorsement for the lifestyle. You ride out 2 days later, taking the long route to avoid known ambush sites. You pass through ghost towns, whole places gutted by gold fever and bandits. One has a church that's still standing, barely, the pews filled with bones and silence. You don't stop long. By the time you reach Devil's Backbone, the air's different. Thinner, drier, like the place doesn't want you there. You camp behind a boulder near a game trail and wait. Spider's known to travel light and fast, but even a ghost leaves tracks. You find signs, smudged boot prints, a dead rabbit skinned expertly, then a discarded whiskey bottle with a black widow crawling out the neck. You stare at it for a moment, either a warning or just his idea of a joke. You hear something after dusk. A twig snaps, then another. You go silent, hand on your pistol, heart thumping so loud you're sure the whole canyon can hear it. A figure appears against the ridge, silhouetted by moonlight. He moves smooth, confident, and dragging something behind him. It's not a kill, it's a body. You wait. Don't breathe. Spider's not just dangerous, he's theatrical. If he's showing himself, it's not by accident, but the wind shifts and the stink hits you. Rot, blood, and old leather. He's dragging a bounty hunter, or what's left of one. Maybe Brig, maybe someone newer, someone slower. Doesn't matter. The message is clear. Keep chasing me, and you'll end up the same. But you're not running. Not yet. Next morning you find a trail of boot prints headed south, weaving through a narrow pass. You follow cautiously, setting the metal snare just behind your camp, half hoping he's foolish enough to double back. Then you push on. Hours later you catch him. Not all of him, just a glimpse. A flash of coat through the brush. You raise your rifle, breathe slow, aim. Click. Nothing. Misfire. You curse under your breath, duck behind cover, fumbling with the bolt, and then, bang! A shot cracks the air and dirt kicks up an inch from your face. He's got you marked. Game on. You scramble for a better angle, take a blind shot, then roll. Silence. When you peek again, he's gone. You return to camp shaken, unsure if you missed or if he let you live. That night the trap sprung, caught something. It's not him, it's a note nailed to a raccoon. Too slow. Try harder. Spider. Your hands tremble just a little. You stoke the fire higher that night. You're not dealing with a criminal. You're in a duel with a madman. Spider Callahan is the kind of man who leaves notes on raccoons and then vanishes into the canyons like a ghost with a grudge. You wake up the next morning with your hand on your pistol and your eyes bloodshot from a night of turning every sound into a threat. Your horse looks tired of this already. He's staring at you like he's reconsidering your partnership. You can't blame him. This isn't normal bounty hunting. This is a psychological war you didn't sign up for, and it's only day 3. But you're not about to back down. You came for $500, and $500 is a lot of reasons to keep moving forward. So you reload, recheck your snares, reinforce your nerves with the last swig of terrible coffee, and you ride, slow and low, scanning the cliffs and the brush and even the shadows for any sign of that lunatic. The trail you follow is half real, half imagined. Bits of broken twigs, scorched grass where someone's made a hasty fire. At one point, you find a tree with a bullet hole through the trunk and a splatter of dried blood. Could be his, could be someone else's. You're starting to realize that following Spider is like trying to trap a rattlesnake in a colander. It's possible, but stupid. Around midday you reach a narrow gulch known to locals as Widow's Bite. It's the kind of place even mountain lions avoid. Steep walls, echoes that bounce like ghost voices. You've got 2 choices: cut through and risk walking into a trap, or go around and lose a full day. You go in. It's quiet. Too quiet, of course. You hug the wall, boots crunching on loose shale. Every step feels like you're stepping on bones. Then, just as your foot hits a suspicious pile of dirt, you hear the click. You don't even look. You throw yourself sideways, hit the ground, and the explosion goes off behind you. Dirt, rock, and one unlucky jackrabbit go flying. You're mostly fine. Your pride, less so. Spider left you a landmine. A home-built one, judging by the smell of old whiskey and black powder. A welcome mat, as one old-timer called it. You crawl forward, slower now, eyes scanning everything. The sun is slipping west, painting the gulch in gold and orange like a fire that hasn't started yet. At the far end, you find something hanging from a low branch. Another note. This one just says, better. You're almost impressed. Almost. You set camp just outside Widow's Bite, under a rock overhang that doesn't feel safe but looks dramatic. The stars are bright tonight, sharp against the black sky. Your fire's small, controlled. You eat jerky like it's gourmet steak and stare at the flames, wondering how many other bounty hunters Spider has outwitted, or killed. Probably both. There's a theory some folks whisper back in saloons, the fringe sort of claim that Spider Callahan used to be a Pinkerton, that he was trained, not just born twisted, maybe even part of some secret government job gone bad, too sharp. too calm under pressure, knew explosives like an engineer and moved like someone who didn't fear bullets. Some say he snapped during a manhunt gone wrong, shot his partner, and just kept running. Others say Spider's not even one man, but two brothers working together, swapping clothes and confusing trackers. One hides, one distracts. Together, they stay alive by feeding the myth. And then there are the really wild theories. That he's cursed, unkillable. Some claim he's been shot a dozen times and walked away laughing. A few swear he can talk to animals. You don't buy any of it, but you admit this. The man knows how to get inside your head. The next day, your luck shifts. At the edge of a dried creek bed, you find something worth more than a trail. A boot. One boot, half buried in silt, still warm from the sun. Not yours, not local. Worn in just the way a long traveller's would be. A few feet beyond that, boot prints. Not faked, not smudged. Fresh. You follow. Spider's trail winds up into the high rocks. Higher than you'd like. Your horse can't make it, so you leave him behind, hidden with your supplies. You take your rifle, your pistol, and your nerves, and you climb. By late afternoon the wind is sharp and the climb cruel, but the prints are there, even a drop of blood now and then. Maybe he's hurt, maybe it's bait. Then you find the cave, small, hidden beneath an outcropping. There's smoke curling from inside, thin and blue. Your heart is pounding. This could be it. You inch forward, breath shallow, eyes straining to adjust to the dim. Inside it's cramped and reeks of sweat, gun oil and burned beans. There's a bedroll, a scattered pack, a map with red X's. No Spider, just his gear, just his mess. Then you see it, a tripwire, inches from your boot. You freeze. Trace the wire to a rigged pistol tucked into the wall. Clever, silent but deadly. You step back, heart thundering, and knock over a canteen. It clatters, loud. You wait. Nothing. You take the map, take the food, and you run. Halfway down the ridge, a shot rings out, then another. Chips of stone explode next to your head. He's above you, watching, toying with you. You duck and roll, curse loudly, and fire 2 blind shots up the slope. Nothing. No movement. No return fire. When you finally make it back to your horse, you're breathless and bruised. Your saddlebag now contains Spider's map, which shows more than just escape routes. It shows towns he's marked. Names, dates, possibly his next moves, possibly a trail of victims. You ride into the next town, Dust Creek, looking like you've seen a ghost because you kind of have. The sheriff, a bored-looking man with a broom moustache, doesn't ask many questions. Just eyes the map, shrugs, and offers a piece of advice. If you're chasing Spider, bring a coffin. Yours or his. Either way, you'll need one. You laugh. Then stop laughing. He's not wrong. You ride out of Dust Creek before dawn, saddle creaking, your horse plodding slow under the weight of supplies, nerves, and a new piece of intelligence that's eating at the corners of your brain. That map you stole from Spider's cave, it's no ordinary trail guide. It's a stitched-together patchwork of handwritten notes, rough sketches, and ominous red circles drawn around certain towns like cursed halos. One of them is Grey Gulch, a nowhere kind of place nestled between the hills, mostly known for its whiskey, sheep, and its talent for being forgotten. But Spider's marked it with 2 slashes and a date, November 5th. That's 2 days from now. You're not sure if it's a planned heist, a rendezvous, or just another misdirection from a man who enjoys driving his hunters mad. But you know one thing, wherever Spider intends to be, that's where you're headed. Grey Gulch it is. The ride takes you through country so empty the silence feels alive. Plains stretch endlessly, a golden ocean of grass and brittle earth, dotted with the occasional tumbleweed that bounces past like it has somewhere better to be. You spot antelope now and then. A hawk rides the thermals high above, and for a minute you envy its view. No trails, no traps, no raccoons with insults nailed to their heads. Just wind and wings. By the time you see the rooftops of Grey Gulch, the sun is bleeding out across the horizon. You're dirty, sunburned, and paranoid. A child on the edge of town points at you and yells, "Another bounty man!" You don't even flinch. You just tip your hat and roll in like a storm cloud with a saddlebag. The town is small, real small. 1 street, 2 bars, a stable, a blacksmith, and a church that also doubles as the schoolhouse, and occasionally, depending on who you ask, the jail. You tie off your horse and duck into the saloon, hoping to blend in, but bounty hunters don't blend. Not with coats this long, eyes this twitchy, and weapons strapped like they're part of your anatomy. Inside, the place smells like spilled beer and overcooked stew. The barkeeper's a woman in her 60s with arms like tree branches and a scar down her lip that makes her smile look like a dare. You order coffee, she gives you whiskey, you don't correct her. You mention Spider Callahan's name casually, as if you're not hunting him for half a month's salary. People go quiet, not dramatically, but in that slow, simmering way that says they know something, and they'd rather bite a rattlesnake than tell a stranger about it. Eventually a man at the end of the bar speaks up. He's got a beard that's trying to escape his face, and a stare like he's seen too much for one lifetime. He says, "Spider was here 3 days ago, bought tobacco and left $2 for the preacher's dog. Then he vanished." You blink. "The preacher's dog?" He shrugs. "He liked the dog." You thank him and finish your drink, mind already churning. Spider's definitely been through, which means he's either still nearby or watching you right now, sipping something strong, enjoying the show. That night you sleep in the livery stable. It's cheaper, safer, and smells marginally better than the hotel. You bed down with your rifle and try not to think about how exposed you are. The map is spread out under your bedroll, lit by the flicker of a tiny lantern. You trace the lines again, this time noticing something odd. A symbol, half scratched, barely legible, next to Grey Gulch. Looks like a snake curled around a dagger. You've seen that before. Back during your time with a volunteer posse in Arkansas, there was a gang operating under that same mark. They called themselves the Fork-Tongue Boys, charming name, and they were known for robbing freight wagons, hiding in caves and gutting any lawman who came too close. The gang vanished 5 years ago, reportedly wiped out by a rival crew. But if Spider was part of them, or still is, this could all be bigger than one outlaw with a sense of flair. The next morning you wake to find someone's tampered with your saddlebag. Nothing's missing, except your bullets. You scramble out of the hay, heart kicking, eyes darting in the pale blue morning light. No one's around, just your horse, chewing indifferently, and a stable boy who swears he didn't see anyone. You find your bullets in the water trough, floating like drowned secrets. There's no note this time, just the gesture. He's here, somewhere, and now it's a game of inches. You reload with spares, double-check every strap, and head toward the church/school/jail, where the local preacher also serves as the sheriff, mayor, and sometimes doctor. He's a wiry old man named Elias who greets you like he's expecting a funeral, possibly yours. "I've heard of you," he says, narrowing his eyes. "You're the one brought in Two Ears Harper." You nod. "And now, I'm here for Callahan." Elias sighs and leans against the fence post like the whole world just got heavier. Spider's not just an outlaw. He's a story. You kill him, and 10 more just like him pop up. You catch him alive, and someone will poison his breakfast before you get 2 miles out. He's too deep in. No one gets out that far and comes back the same. You ask if he's seen him. He shakes his head. Not directly. But strange things have been happening. Livestock gutted. A barn set on fire 2 nights ago. And then there's this. He pulls out a small piece of cloth from his pocket. Black silk, embroidered with that same snake and dagger symbol. You leave with more questions than answers, and a sense of dread that clings like wet wool. That evening a man walks into town. Dirty coat, worn hat, limp in his step. No one notices right away, but when he collapses outside the saloon, bleeding from a stomach wound, the place erupts. You're there in seconds. The man's dying, fast. You kneel beside him and ask what happened. "Spider," he gasps. He's planning something. Tomorrow night, the bank." Then he's gone. You stand slowly, blood drying on your hands. Now it's not just a hunt, it's a countdown. The dead man doesn't have a name, or if he does, no one's willing to give it. Folks just mutter about him being new in town, or from the Southern Trail, or the quiet sort. No one admits they knew him well, and maybe they didn't. Or maybe they're just smart enough to keep Spider Callahan's shadow from stretching in their direction. Either way, his body gets carted to the back of the church and laid out on a makeshift table beneath a stained glass window of St. Michael that has 2 bullet holes in it. This is Grey Gulch, after all. You spend the rest of the night watching the bank. It's a squat little structure made of stone and optimism, with a second-floor apartment where the manager lives and drinks himself into semi-consciousness by 8 p.m. sharp, if the flickering lamp in the window's anything to go by. You scout the perimeter, looking for weaknesses. 1 broken shutter, 2 low windows, a rusted back door. Not much of a fortress. If Spider wants to rob it, or burn it, or blow it sky high, it wouldn't take much effort. which is probably the point. Around midnight, you stake out across the street, wrapped in your coat, rifle across your lap. The night is a different world out here. Quieter, sure, but alive with whispers, creaking boards, distant hoofbeats that vanish before they arrive. A dog barks once and then doesn't again. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. That's when you spot him. Far end of the street, just a shape at first. Then a man walking casual like he owns the dirt under his boots. Long coat, wide hat, and that unmistakable gait. The slow, slouchy confidence of someone who knows every eye is on him and doesn't give a damn. Spider Callahan, in the flesh. He walks past the saloon, past the general store, past a drunk passed out on the porch, and heads straight for the bank. You slide your rifle into position, but you don't shoot, not yet. He doesn't go in, he doesn't draw a weapon. He just stops, turns, and lights a cigarette with a match that flares like lightning in the dark. The light catches his face, just enough to confirm what you already knew. Then he looks right at you. Not a glance, a look. Like he's known where you were all along. Like this whole thing, this town, this plan, this night, is a story he's been writing, and you're just here to turn the pages. He tips his hat, turns, and walks off into the dark. You don't follow, you want to, but you're not that dumb. This is bait, the entire thing, and tomorrow's the trap. At sunrise, the town's already buzzing. Word spread about the man who died in the street. People are locking doors, boarding windows, whispering names like they're curses. Spider's not just a legend here, he's a weather event, and now that he's near, everyone's preparing for the storm. You meet with Elias, the preacher, sheriff, whatever. He's sharpening a knife like it's going to help. We don't have a real jail, he reminds you, and only 4 men I'd trust with a gun, 2 of whom are under the influence most hours of the day. Sounds about right, you say. You sketch out what little of a plan you've got. 2 of those trusted men will stay inside the bank with rifles and try to look intimidating. You'll stay across the street, same position as last night. Elias wants to ring the church bell if things go bad. You suggest that if he does that, Spider might blow the whole steeple off. That's fair, he says, and stops sharpening the knife. That afternoon you decide to check the outskirts. Maybe you'll get lucky and catch Spider preparing something. A fuse line, a stash of dynamite, a half-buried friend with a bad attitude. You find horse tracks about a mile out. Fresh ones, 2 sets, that's new. Spider's not alone. You follow them briefly, keeping low until you reach a ridge overlooking a dry creek. There you spot a small camp. 2 figures, one Spider. The other is unfamiliar. Taller, broader, moving with the stiff grace of someone used to combat. Maybe ex-military. They're packing something into saddlebags. Ropes, tools, small black boxes that you're pretty sure are explosives. You can't get closer without alerting them, so you retreat. Fast. Back in town, you round up the others. Elias calls in the rifleman. You board the bank tighter, reinforce the door with steel nails and prayer. Then you wait. Night falls heavy and slow. The street is empty. Lamps dimmed. The only light comes from the moon and your nerves. At midnight it begins. A horse whinnies, then silence, then a gunshot. Not near the bank, across town, a distraction. You stay put, eyes on the bank. A second later, a stick of dynamite lands 10 feet from the back door. You shout, raise your rifle, but the explosion hits first. A blast of fire and dust throws stone and splinters into the air. Screams follow. The bank's sidewall caves slightly, but the structure holds, for now. Gunfire erupts from inside. Your 2 riflemen are engaged. You see a figure dart through the smoke, moving fast toward the breach. Spider. You don't even think. You fire. Your bullet hits something, not flesh, but metal. His saddlebag, maybe. He stumbles, but keeps moving. You rush in now, ducking under the smoke, heart thundering. Inside the bank, it's chaos. One of your men's down, bleeding. The other's trading fire through the front window. You spot Spider near the vault, dragging the manager by the collar, shouting something you can't hear over the noise. You raise your weapon again, but then a sharp pain flares in your shoulder. You've been hit. Through the wall, maybe. A graze, but deep enough to throw you off balance. You fall behind the teller's desk as Spider makes his move. He tosses the manager aside, grabs a satchel, heavy with coin by the sound, and heads for the breach. You pull yourself up, bleeding, furious, and take one last shot. This time you hit him. He stumbles hard, drops the satchel, curses, but he doesn't fall. Instead he turns, locks eyes with you and smiles. Then he vanishes into the smoke. You limp after him, but by the time you hit the street he's gone. A second horse waits just beyond the hill, and both riders, Spider and his new friend, are already blurs in the dark. They leave behind a busted bank, a dead man, and a lot of unanswered questions. You stand there, bleeding and bitter, as the townsfolk emerge, coughing and pointing. One of them asks, "Did you catch him?" You don't answer, because you don't know. Not yet. You wake up with a bandage around your shoulder and a hangover that you didn't earn. The preacher sheriff surgeon Elias patched you up and left you in the back of the church with a jug of warm water, a tin of stale biscuits, and a Bible resting on your chest like maybe holy proximity would scare the fever off. You sit up slowly, wincing, and realise that everything from your ribs to your pride has taken a proper beating. Outside, the town is quiet in that particular post-chaos way. Grey Gulch is bruised but breathing. The bank is blackened at one corner. The manager is locked in his upstairs apartment, refusing to come down, until someone proves Spider Callahan is at least 100 miles away. And the rifleman who survived the firefight is now being referred to as Lucky Pete, despite having lost half his ear. And Spider, gone. Just gone. Again. It doesn't feel like defeat, not entirely. You stopped him from cleaning the bank out, and you definitely shot him. There was blood on the dirt, dark and fresh, but it doesn't feel like a win either. More like you went toe-to-toe with a rattlesnake, and when the dust settled, the snake wasn't dead. It was just laughing somewhere in the hills. You limp out to the stable where your horse is chewing lazily through someone else's hay. You need to move. Staying in one place too long is how you get buried in it, and something about Spider's escape doesn't sit right. He didn't just vanish. He retreated. That's a strategy, not desperation. That means he has more planned. You check your saddlebag. The map's still there. The town's marked in red. The dates, the symbols. But now you notice something you missed before. A faint pencil line, almost rubbed away, leading west. A line that curves along a ridge and ends in a small X labelled Judah's Leap. You ask around, and no one wants to talk about Judah's Leap. Not openly, not during daylight. Finally, Elias corners you and speaks in that gravel-low tone he saves for church confessions and funeral duties. Judah's Leap ain't on any real map, he says. It's a hideout. Natural fortress. Used to be a mining camp till the ground gave way and swallowed half the site. What's left of it's all jagged rock and vertical drops. If you were hiding and didn't want to be found, that's where you'd go. You nod. Your shoulder aches like it's on fire, but there's no chance you're stopping now. That evening you head out. The ride west is harsher than anything before. Narrow trails skirting cliff edges, thickets that claw at your coat, an air so dry your lips crack open just from breathing. The land gets meaner the further you go. It's like it remembers blood. At one point you pass a twisted tree with 3 sets of initials carved into the trunk, and below it, a noose rotting in the wind. No sign of a body, just the rope, swaying like a lazy metronome. By nightfall you find a spot to camp where the rocks rise high around you. You build no fire. You sleep with your back to the cliff and your hand resting on your pistol. The moon creeps across the sky like it's in mourning, and you dream of dynamite, smoke and laughter that doesn't have a face. The next morning you reach it. Judah's Leap. It lives up to the name. A high plateau cut into 3 levels surrounded by vertical rock faces and spires of stone that look like God was in a foul mood when he carved them. There's a narrow path leading in, barely wide enough for a horse, and what looks like a collapsed mine entrance halfway up the southern face. You dismount, leave the horse tied at a lower outcropping and start climbing. Your shoulder protests with every step, but you push through it. You're close now. You can feel it. At the mine entrance there's old debris. Rusted tools, empty whiskey bottles, a torn boot. Signs of life, but nothing recent. You're starting to think this might be another dead end when something catches your eye. Smoke. Thin, rising from a chimney carved into the cliff above you. Not from the mine, from somewhere higher up. You climb again, slower now, careful. The rock is loose, crumbling in places. You use a pickaxe you found below to steady your way up. When you reach the upper shelf, you find it. A camp, tucked against the cliff wall, camouflaged with tarps and brush. There's a small fire pit still smouldering, a half-cooked rabbit on a spit and a pair of bedrolls, one stained with blood. He's been here, and he's hurt. You crouch low, scanning for movement. Nothing, no footsteps, no sound, but your gut is screaming. This is wrong, too quiet. You edge forward, and then you see it. A wire, thin, just visible against the rock. Tripwire, you freeze. And then a voice behind you says, "Too slow again, friend." You spin, too late. Spider stands a dozen feet away, rifle aimed at your chest, bandage wrapped around his side, grinning like a man who just won a bet he never doubted. "You're consistent," he says. "I'll give you that." You stare down the barrel of his rifle and don't flinch. "That bank robbery went south," he shrugs. "Distractions are messy. Sometimes they bleed. You do something stupid. You smirk. You planning on talking me to death, or do we get to the shooting part?" He steps closer, rifle still steady. "See, here's the thing. I don't actually want to kill you. That throws you," he notices. "You're not like the rest," he says. "You've got some sense. Some fire. You actually understand what this life is." "And what life is that?" you ask, stalling, watching for weakness. He lowers the rifle, just a hair. "One where the law ain't about right or wrong. It's about who's faster, who's willing to do the worst thing first. You know that. I see it in your eyes. He's not wrong, but he's not right either. I hunt men like you say, because if no one does, you keep going. You burn towns, you gut good people." "Good people?" he echoes, laughing. "There's no such thing. Just people who ain't desperate yet." Then he tosses something and instinct takes over. You duck, roll. It's not dynamite, it's dust. Fine powder, flaring bright in the firelight. A distraction. By the time your eyes clear, he's gone. You run after him, heart hammering. He's fast, limping but agile. He dives off the ledge, rolls down the slope and vanishes into a crevice in the rock. You don't follow, not yet. You catch your breath, taste blood, and whisper to the night, "Next time." Because now it's not about the bounty as it's personal. The next time doesn't come for 5 days. That's how long you spend combing the rock fields around Judah's Leap, picking through the dust and shadows, following tracks that vanish the second they start to make sense. Sometimes you catch signs, ashes still warm, fresh footprints, even a strip of cloth snagged on a thorn bush stained with blood. But they all lead nowhere. It's like chasing smoke, like trying to trap a ghost who's better at being alive than anyone you've ever met. Your shoulder is healing, slowly, and only in the looser sense of the word. You've stopped bleeding at least. That's about as good as it gets out here. There's no doctor, no medicine beyond whiskey and willpower, and even your horse is beginning to walk like he's second-guessing your life choices. By the 6th morning, you've had enough. You decide to leave Judah's Leap behind and circle south, toward towns that still appear on maps and where a hot meal doesn't come with a side of paranoia. That's how you end up in a dusty little spot called Willow's End, a place that sounds pleasant until you actually see it. It's nothing more than a warped row of buildings on the edge of a dried-out creek bed. There's a single saloon, a livery stable that doubles as the blacksmith's forge, and a church that's mostly just a bell tower leaning at a very concerning angle. You've seen ghost towns with more life, but the second you ride in, something's off. People stare, not just casual glances, but the kind of looks that pin you to your saddle and start rearranging your obituary. Then you see it. A fresh wanted poster nailed to the front of the saloon. Not weathered, not sun-faded. It's him, Spider Callahan, but not like before. This one isn't offering a few $100s and a shrug. This one says $2,000, dead or alive, and under that, in bold red ink, wanted for the murder of US Marshal Clyde Heller. You stare at it for a long moment. Not because it shocks you, Spider's always had it in him, but because of what it means. Killing a marshal isn't just criminal, it's war. The government takes that sort of thing personally. When a deputy dies, there's paperwork. When a marshal dies, they send men. Real ones, trained ones, people you don't want to be on the bad side of. Inside the saloon, the air is thick with sawdust and suspicion. The barkeep barely looks up as he pours you something vaguely drinkable. You nod at the poster on the wall. "That bounty real?" He grunts. "As real as the blood still drying on his coat." A man 2 stools down leans over. Dirty hat, cracked boots, and a revolver that's seen better centuries. "You after him too?" You nod once. The man grins like he just found gold in his oatmeal. "You're the 4th this week. Last one didn't come back. We're all assuming he's fertilizing something ugly." You ask what they know. You get stories. One woman says she saw Spider riding north toward the dunes with 3 other men in tow. Another swears he's holed up in an old church 10 miles west, with a new gang calling themselves the Red Tooth Riders, a name that sounds like something a drunk teenager would make up and still somehow fits the vibe perfectly. Then there's the old man in the corner, who says Spider's not even in the area anymore, that he lit a fire under the Pinkertons and vanished across the border disguised as a priest. Most of it's nonsense, but two things line up. The murder is real, and Spider's name is now everywhere. He's not running anymore, and he's escalating. You spend the night in a room above the saloon that's mostly walls and splinters, and pray the roof doesn't cave in. You dream of fire, a burning badge, and Spider smiling in the flames like a man who knows he's dragging the whole world down with him. The next morning you ride west. You're headed for a place called Gallows Bend, another fringe town with no sheriff, no rules, and just enough coin moving through it to attract the wrong kinds of people. You figure if Spider's recruiting, or hiding, he'll be there. The ride is brutal, heat pressing down like a hand on the back of your neck. You pass 2 rattlesnakes mating in the open, completely unbothered by your presence. Must be nice. By dusk you reach the outskirts of Gallows Bend. From a distance it looks like any other half-dead outpost. Rooftops warped, fences sagging, dogs barking at ghosts. But the moment you step foot into town you feel the tension. There are more horses tied up than makes sense for a town this size. More men with guns slung low on their hips, walking like they've already chosen who they're going to kill if things go sideways. You head to the saloon, of course. This one's louder, meaner. A haze of cigar smoke hangs low like a ceiling. You see 3 card games, a knife fight in progress near the back, and a man passed out face first into a plate of beans. Your kind of place. You ask around. No one says Spider's name, but you start to hear whispers. Someone called the Preacher is here. No one's sure who he is exactly, but he's recruiting guns for something big, offering coin, supplies, and immunity for those with bounties of their own. Word is he's assembling an army, not just a gang, not for a robbery, for a standoff. You sit with that for a moment, let it settle into your bones. If Spider Callahan is this Preacher, then you're not chasing an outlaw anymore, you're chasing the start of a war. Later that night you slip out of town and scout the hills to the north, where riders are coming and going under cover of dark. There's a camp out there, you're sure of it. Not like the others, this one's fortified, guarded, organised, not just hiding from the law, preparing for it. Back in town you write a letter, not to anyone specific. Just the kind a man writes when he knows the odds are shifting and he might not be on the winning side anymore. You don't sleep. Not really. At sunrise, you pack your gear. You're going to find that camp. You're going to find the Preacher. And if it's Spider, you're going to end it. One way or another. You don't bother with stealth in the traditional sense. You've learned that when it comes to men like Spider, or the Preacher, if he's trying out new aliases, what rattles them most isn't sneaking through the shadows. It's walking straight into the lion's den and looking it in the eye. Boldness unnerves the bold. So you ride toward the northern hills with the sun at your back and your rifle strapped in plain view. Let them see you coming. Let them wonder if you've got backup or just a death wish. The trail leads through a jagged canyon shaped like a splitting skull. Locals call it Widow's Pass. You remember the name because there's a folk tale attached, about a woman who lost all 5 of her husbands in the same spot, each to a different kind of betrayal. Poison, pistol, knife, fire, and a kick from a mule. The mule story, you suspect, is truer than the rest. Just past the second ridge you find it. The camp. It spreads across a natural basin tucked out of sight from the main trail. About a dozen tents, 2 makeshift towers fashioned from old lumber and wagon wheels, and a signal fire smouldering low in the centre. There's a corral of horses, a covered wagon turned into a munition stash, and at least 20 men wandering around with guns too polished for casual herding. You don't ride in. You dismount half a mile out and crawl up to a bluff for a better look. From there you scan the faces, the movements, the structure. This isn't a gang, it's a militia. These men aren't here to rob a train. They're drilling, organising, working in shifts. You spot a man teaching others how to load dynamite into hollowed-out fence posts. Another sketching something that looks very much like a map of a town. Maybe Gallows Bend, maybe somewhere bigger. And then you see him. Spider Callahan. Or rather the man who used to be Spider Callahan. He's standing in front of the fire, coat clean, hat tilted back, no longer limping. His side must have healed. Or maybe it never needed to in the first place. He's giving orders now, not just surviving. Barking instructions, gesturing at the map. He's not hiding, he's commanding. A man walks up beside him, taller, built like a tree stump with arms. Could be the second rider you saw back at Judah's Leap. They confer briefly, then separate. You watch as Spider, no, the Preacher, moves to a small tent near the back. Private. Guarded. That's where you'll go. You wait until dusk, then you move. It's not the smoothest approach. You slip once on loose rock and land flat on your back in a bush full of thorns. You bite your lip to stay quiet and pick half a cactus out of your thigh before crawling on. Eventually you reach the outer edge of camp. There's a gap in their patrol near the northern perimeter, just enough time to slide between the tents and crouch behind the wagon. You can hear voices now, close. "They still coming?" one man asks. "3 groups already past the canyon. The rest are due by sunrise," someone replies. "Preacher says we'll make the first strike by Sunday." First strike? You knew Spider was bold, knew he was dangerous, but you didn't know he'd gone full warlord. This isn't revenge, it's revolution. You slip toward the tent, ducking between shadows, keeping your boots silent on the dirt. 2 guards stand nearby, leaning on their rifles, half alert. You're about to weigh your odds, 1 against 2, with a bum shoulder and an aching leg, when a commotion erupts behind you. Gunfire, screaming. Someone just attacked the camp. Chaos breaks out like wildfire. You don't waste the opportunity. As the guards rush toward the gunfire, you dart inside the tent. It's dimly lit by a lantern swinging from a rope. Maps, crates, a desk covered in papers, and behind it, Spider Callahan, staring at you like he's been expecting this exact moment all day. He doesn't reach for his gun. He just leans back in his chair, steeples his fingers, and says, "You again? You really think you can take on the territory?" you ask, stepping forward, gun drawn but not raised. Yet. He smirks. "I don't need to take the territory. Just bleed it long enough that it collapses on its own. You want to shoot him. You really do. But something about the way he sits there, calm in the middle of madness, unsettles you. He's too relaxed, too measured. "You're going to get them all killed," you say. "Maybe," he says. "Or maybe I give them a choice. I give the drunks, the drifters, the misfits and the outlaws something more than dying alone in the dirt." "You're not a hero," you snap. "I'm not pretending to be." More gunfire outside, then a huge boom. Something explodes near the tower. You feel the ground shake. Dust rains down from the tent ceiling. Spider rises slowly, calmly, as if this is just the dinner bell ringing. You should go, before someone mistakes you for one of them. You hesitate. "One of who?" He grins. "The new bounty hunters. The ones the marshal sent." You freeze. "What?" "I told you," he says. "You're not the only one hunting me anymore. And some of them don't play nice." That's when the tent rips open behind you and a man with a shotgun steps in. You don't hesitate this time. You shoot twice. He drops like a sack of flour, the boom of his weapon still echoing through the night. You turn, but Spider is gone. Again. You run after him, ducking between burning tents and bodies, some breathing, some not. The camp is in full retreat. Bounty hunters pouring in from the cliffs. Lawmen with badges and spurs lighting the place up like Judgment Day. This was planned. An ambush. Just not by you. You dive into the dust, crawl to safety, blood pounding in your ears. Above you, silhouetted on the ridge, you see a horseman riding west. Fast. Alone. Spider. The preacher. Whatever he is now. You watch him vanish into the darkness, again 1 step ahead. And for the first time, you wonder if this chase will ever really end. Or if it's just the beginning of something worse. You don't stop running until your lungs feel like torn canvas, and your boots are half melting into your feet. Behind you, what used to be a secret militia camp is now a bonfire of gunpowder and vengeance. Smoke curls into the sky, lit orange from within like some hellmouth just cracked open. Bodies lie crumpled between tents, some still twitching, others still holding their weapons as if they're waiting for orders. The marshals and bounty men that swarmed the place aren't celebrating. They're regrouping, checking for survivors, scanning the cliffs for anyone who got out alive, you included. You stay low, hiding behind an outcrop while the scene settles into something less murderous. Eventually a group of bounty hunters strolls past close enough for you to overhear their chatter. You see him? Spider? Who else? They say he slipped through the East Pass. Again. That man's not a fugitive, he's a myth. You grit your teeth. He's no myth. He's very real and now more dangerous than ever. You give it another hour before crawling out of the shadows. By then the fire's mostly down, the smoke trailing lazily into the early morning sky like a surrender flag that nobody means. You move toward the wreckage, careful to walk like someone who belongs. Nobody stops you. Everyone's too busy counting corpses or patching bullet holes. You blend in, a nameless, blood-smudged face in the fog of aftermath. You find a half-collapsed tent and sit with your back against it. Your mind's buzzing like a kicked beehive. You saw Spider, spoke to him, you were in his tent, you pulled a trigger on one of his men, and he still slipped away. Again. But something shifted. This wasn't just another escape. This was a declaration. Spider didn't just want to run. He wanted to build. That camp wasn't a hideout. It was a launch pad. And if the marshals hadn't come when they did, you might be waking up tomorrow to headlines about towns burning and telegraph lines going dead. He's trying to start something bigger than himself now, and you're still just one step behind. By midday, the marshals have turned the place into a crime scene. Men in long coats and clean hats walk around measuring distances between bullet holes and boot prints, as if any of it will bring them closer to understanding the chaos. You know better. You've been in this long enough to understand the difference between facts and patterns. That's when you spot him, Marshal Landry. You've never met him personally, but you've heard enough stories to fill 3 graveyards and a book deal. He's tall, with hair going grey at the edges and eyes so cold they'd put out a prairie fire. He's got a scar across one cheek that looks like a railroad track, and a voice that sounds like someone dragging a spade through gravel. He walks up to you like he already knows your name. You're the bounty man who took down Two Ears Harper. You nod slowly. That was me. And you're after Spider? Another nod. Been on him for weeks. Landry looks you over, then hands you a rolled up paper. You open it. It's another wanted poster. Spider's face, again. Only this time, the reward's gone up. $5,000, dead or alive. His crimes now include arson, multiple murders, destruction of federal property, and something vague but ominous labelled seditious conspiracy. Government's getting real tired of him, Landry says. We've got a task force now. Half bounty hunters, half marshals. You in? You hesitate. I work better alone. He squints at you. Not anymore, you don't. This isn't some outlaw on the run. This is an insurrection waiting to hatch. And you, well, you've been closer than any of us. You fold the poster, tuck it into your coat. If I find him, I don't plan on sharing the bounty. Landry smiles, just barely. Fair enough. Just make sure he doesn't light another match before you do. That night you leave the wreckage behind and head south. Not because the marshals tell you to, not because of the reward, but because Spider wants you to follow. That's the most dangerous part. He enjoys this. The chase. The cat and mouse rhythm of it all. You've become part of the game for him. A familiar shadow. A worthy opponent. And if you don't end it soon, you're going to wake up one morning with a knife in your chest and a note pinned to your shirt that says, "Well played." 2 towns later, in a place called Brimstone Ridge, you finally catch another lead. You've been trailing quietly, asking around, showing the poster without being too obvious. Most folks claim they haven't seen anything, but a boy in the stables says he saw a man with a bandaged arm and a mean laugh leave town with 2 others just the day before. He points you toward the old iron trail. It's a broken-down supply route that hasn't been used since the railroad ate up its business. Now it's a haven for drifters, smugglers, and folks who don't want to be seen by anyone who counts. You ride out at first light, hugging the trail with your coat pulled tight and your eyes squinting into the rising dust. The path is rough, lined with dead trees and broken fences. At one point, you pass a burned-out wagon that still smells like kerosene. A buzzard watches you from a tree with that smug look birds get when they expect a meal soon. Then you find it, a fresh grave, hastily dug, shallow, marked with a crooked cross made from 2 snapped branches. You dismount, kneel, no name, no sign of who they were, just a grave and the silence of the wild. You dig, gently, using your hands and the flat of your knife. The body's still warm, shot once in the gut. No badge, no papers, but the boots are federal issue, a marshal. You mutter something half prayer, half apology and rebury him. The wind kicks up as you ride on. You're not the only one chasing Spider anymore, but you're starting to think you might be the only one who understands what's really coming. He's not going to run forever. He's going to stand, and when he does, you'll have to decide what kind of man you are. Bounty hunter, peacekeeper, or just the last one left standing in a long line of ghosts. You make camp that night in a hollowed-out gully beside an old cattle fence, long since surrendered to rust and weather. The stars overhead are sharp and unblinking, the kind of stars that seem to be watching you instead of just shining. Your fire is small, hidden behind a rock wall, the flames barely high enough to warm your hands. You don't need light tonight. You need quiet. You need stillness. You need to let your thoughts settle into something that resembles a plan. Because this isn't just a hunt anymore, it's a siege. Spider Callahan, preacher, warlord, myth, whatever he's calling himself now, has become something else entirely. He's not a man running for his life. He's a man reshaping it, building an empire out of fear and reputation and people who've run out of options. It's not just the reward money swelling. It's his influence. He's recruiting now. Not just outlaws and murderers, but farmers, disgruntled veterans, men who lost land and pride to railroads and banks, men who want to belong to something, even if that something comes with blood on its hands. You lean back, the firelight flickering across your face, and remember a name you haven't thought about in years. Tom Grady. He was the first man you ever tracked for a bounty. Small time back then. Ran a gambling racket out of an abandoned riverboat and shot a card cheat who tried to leave with his teeth. You were green, clumsy. But you got him. Dragged him all the way back to Missouri with a broken nose and frostbitten toes. You collected $60 and a handshake. You remember how light your boots felt afterward, like you'd finally found the road you were meant to walk, and now here you are, 10 years later, the road lined with corpses and regrets. Your boots are heavier these days. Your hand trembles when it rests too long. The line between justice and survival has blurred so thoroughly, you're not sure it was ever there in the first place. Sometime after midnight you hear it. A horse. Not yours, not close, but not far either. You freeze. The wind's on your side, blowing away from your camp, and the rider doesn't seem to know you're here. You crawl to the edge of the gully, belly to the dirt, and peer over the ridge. Moonlight glints off a dark coat, a silver rifle strapped to the saddle. You recognize the rider immediately. Granger Bell, another bounty man. Not the worst, but close enough. Tall, grim, with a habit of letting his targets bleed out instead of bringing them in. You crossed paths once, years ago, when you both hunted the same bandit in El Paso. You got the bounty. He got 2 cracked ribs and swore he'd remember your face. Looks like he has. He rides past, slow and deliberate, scanning the terrain like a hawk. You slip back down into the gully and put out your fire. Granger doesn't stop, just keeps riding toward the west, toward where Spider's trail continues to snake its way across the land. But you feel it now, the race tightening. You're not alone anymore, and you don't like it. The next morning you ride hard. You figure Granger's headed for Raven's Hollow, a miserable smudge of a town nestled in a fold between 2 hills and a stretch of pine forest. The place used to be a lumber outpost, then a boom town, then a boneyard when the silver ran dry and the plague ran wild. Now it's just saloons and secrets and a couple of dogs that bark at every passing cloud. You make it there by noon and head straight for the saloon. It's called the Dead Canary, which you hope is a reference to mining and not what they serve for lunch. The place is quiet when you enter, but there's tension in the air, like everyone's waiting for something to explode, and they're just not sure where the fuse is. And there he is, Granger Bell, sitting at the bar, drink in hand, revolver on the counter like an invitation. You slide onto the stool next to him. "Didn't expect to see you again," he says without looking. "I'm like a bad toothache," you reply. "Always show up when you're enjoying yourself," as he chuckles. "You still chasing Callahan?" "I'm not chasing," you say. "I'm closing in." "Is that what you call it?" He gestures toward the bartender, gets 2 drinks. Man's always 3 steps ahead of you. Hell, he's building something. You ever think maybe he ain't the one running anymore? You take the glass, but don't drink. "I've thought a lot of things lately." That doesn't mean I'm about to let him become king of the ashes. Granger leans in slightly, drops his voice. Word is Callahan's planning to take a town. Not rob it. Take it. Full control. Start with 1, then 2, then who knows? You stare at him. Which town? Granger finishes his drink. No one's sure yet. But it's soon. Real soon. Then he stands, tosses a coin on the bar, and walks out like the conversation didn't just raise the stakes for the entire territory. You sit there a moment longer, fingers tightening around the glass. Because this is it. This is what Spider's been building toward. A town of his own. Not just a hideout, not a fort, not a camp, but a capital. You leave the saloon and find a telegraph station. You scribble a note and send it east, fast as the wire can carry it, to Elias in Grey Gulch, to Marshal Landry, to anyone who still believes in stopping men like Spider Callahan before it's too late. And then you ride. No plan, no sleep. Just fury and fire in your veins. Because if Spider's claiming a town, you're going to be there to stop him. Or die trying. You ride with your jaw clenched so tight your molars ache, your hat pulled low, and the map from Spider's old camp crumpled in your coat like a ticking bomb. The rumour Granger dropped in Raven's Hollow isn't just some campfire exaggeration. It fits. All the signs were there. The growing army, the talk of first strikes, that half-burned map with towns circled in red and crossed through like entries in a grim to-do list. You weren't just hunting a bounty anymore, you were chasing down a blueprint for chaos. And now, for the first time, it feels like he's close to finishing the thing. Spider Callahan. The man who started as a petty outlaw with a head full of mischief and a six-shooter now wants to write his name across the territory in gunpowder and smoke. Not just survive the law, outlast it, replace it. And he might pull it off. The town most likely in his crosshairs, a miserable place called Jericho Flats. You haven't been there in years, and even then, it wasn't for long. Dusty, crooked, and straddling a vital trade route like a broken tooth in a perfect grin. It's the kind of town small enough to fall without making much noise, but important enough to matter once it's gone. Strategic, vulnerable, exactly the kind of place a man like Spider would seize as a symbol. You push your horse harder than you should. The trail from Raven's Hollow to Jericho Flats isn't long, but it's rough. Dry creek beds, thickets of mesquite, and a place locals call the Devil's Staircase, where the rocks form narrow switchbacks that test your balance and your sanity at the same time. You pass the skeleton of a wagon overturned in a gully, the wheels picked clean, canvas torn to ribbons. There's a boot still stuck in the mud. No foot in it, thankfully. Just a grim little souvenir of whoever didn't get out fast enough. At sundown, you crest a hill, and Jericho Flats sprawls below you like a game board mid-collapse. One main street. A dozen crooked buildings, a church with a crooked steeple, and a river just wide enough to matter. You scan the place through your spyglass. Something's off. It's too quiet. No wagons moving. No smoke from chimneys. No kids chasing each other through alleys. And then you spot them. Men on rooftops, armed, moving like they've been drilled. This town's already taken. You swear under your breath and slide back down the ridge, heart pounding like a war drum. You're too late. Spider moved faster than anyone expected, and now you're looking at a town-sized hostage situation, wrapped in a ribbon of rifles and barbed wire. You circle wide and find a shaded ridge where you can watch without being seen. Over the next hour you count nearly 30 men patrolling in pairs. Most are armed with Winchesters. A few carry sawed-off shotguns. 2 wear old Confederate uniforms, just for the flair of it probably. Real frontier cosplay. But make no mistake, they move like soldiers. This is organised, disciplined. And in the middle of it all, lounging on the porch of what used to be the sheriff's office, is Spider himself. He looks better than when you saw him last. Healthier. Smugger, if that's possible. He sips something from a tin mug and laughs at something said by the man beside him. A tall, brutish type with a beard like a bear and a smile like a broken jaw. Probably his second in command. You should be thinking of a way in. But instead you think about the phrase that's haunted every corner of this chase. Dead or alive. It's always there, inked under the sketch of his face like a footnote of menace. Like the law never really cared which one you delivered, just as long as he stopped drawing breath. And right now you're seriously considering the dead option. But not yet. You ride back a few miles, find a gulch to camp in, and light no fire. Just sit and listen to the desert breathe. The next morning you ride to the closest telegraph station, 8 miserable miles away, and send a message to Marshal Landry. Jericho Flats compromised. 30 men. Callahan confirmed. Need support. Urgent. The station clerk reads it twice before transmitting it. "What's in Jericho Flats that's worth all this trouble?" he asks, squinting up at you. "Nothing," you say. That's what makes it so easy to steal. You ride back with dust on your boots and lead in your stomach. There's only one way into Jericho that isn't watched, through the old mill road that collapsed a few years back after a flash flood took out the bridge. But a man on foot could cross the creek bed with some effort. You stash your horse in a dry arroyo, take your rifle, your pistol, your knife, and start walking. It's slow, it's dangerous, and it's the only shot you've got. By dusk, you're behind the old granary. The guards don't patrol back here as often. Maybe they assume no one's dumb enough to sneak into a town that's actively being held hostage by a revolutionary with a god complex. Maybe they're right. But you're not here for a fair fight. You're here to see. You slip into the shadows and start counting heads. Men stationed at key intersections. A wagon of supplies being rolled into the old general store. A preacher, the preacher, holding a sermon on the steps of the church to a group of townsfolk who look more confused than converted. You sneak closer. Then you hear it. Spider's voice. Clear. Calm. Confident. This place was forgotten. left to rot while men in faraway cities make decisions for you. But no more. This town belongs to you now. No more taxes, no more marshals, no more rules made by men you'll never meet. Here, you make your own law. The crowd murmurs, some nod, a few even cheer. You don't know whether to feel rage or awe. He's doing it. He's really doing it. Not just surviving, but inspiring, manipulating hope into something sharp. That night, you slip into the livery stable, hide in a hayloft, sleep in 10-minute jolts, wait for the sound of horses or screams. None come, but the next morning you wake to a new sign nailed outside the saloon. This town is under the protection of Spider Callahan, and underneath smaller text. Outsiders will be treated as threats. You stare at it, your pulse cold. You're not just chasing an outlaw anymore. You're standing in the capital of his kingdom, and whether it ends in blood or surrender, it's only just begun. You stay hidden in that hayloft for nearly a full day, breathing dust and the rank stink of old horses, heart ticking along with the regular shuffle of boots and voices outside. Spider Callahan's turned Jericho Flats into a stage, and every building, every boardwalk plank, every lamppost in this nowhere town is part of the set. The townspeople don't look terrified, at least not in the open. Most of them move like they're walking on fresh ice, trying to appear normal but always listening for the crack beneath their feet. From your perch you count 4 new rifles moved into position. One on the blacksmith's roof, one just behind the hotel's front window, disguised with a curtain. 2 men standing outside the old post office with bandoliers across their chests like decorations at a revolution-themed costume ball. These aren't drunk saloon bandits or dusty desperados. These men believe in something, or maybe they're just scared enough to pretend they do. Spider's turned Jericho into a test run for whatever hell he plans next. And then there's the preacher. Not Spider, though he still wears the nickname like a mask when it suits him, but the real one, or at least the one acting the part. A tall, sunburned man with thick spectacles and a black frock coat 2 sizes too big. He holds meetings every morning in front of the church, speeches about liberty and land, about the failure of lawmen and rail barons and the tyranny of East Coast currency. His sermons slide easily from scripture to sedition, and the townspeople nod like they've been waiting years for someone to give them permission to be angry. And Spider? He watches from a rocking chair most mornings, mug of coffee in hand, one leg crossed over the other. He doesn't need to shout. He doesn't even need to speak. His presence alone makes everything stick. He's become myth, standing in the flesh. A story people want to believe. But you're not here to believe. You're here to end it. You wait until nightfall and slip from the hayloft under a curtain of fog rolling in from the creek. You move fast, careful, using the dark like a second skin. Your shoulder still aches from the last run-in, but your boots are silent and your hand is steady on the revolver. You make your way toward the old boarding house, the one that collapsed partially in the flood 2 years back. Its rear wing still stands, barely, and if memory serves, it has a trapdoor that leads to the old storm cellars, the same ones that connect, in theory, to the old root tunnels dug by the original settlers, when outlaws and dust storms were more common than taxes. You find the trapdoor right where it should be, beneath a broken cot and a few rat droppings. It creaks like a widow's knee, but it opens. You slide down the ladder, lantern gripped in your teeth, boots hitting dirt. The air below is damp and cold. Earth walls, wooden support beams rotting like forgotten bones. It's not a maze, not exactly, but the tunnels twist and dip, and more than once you feel the floor shift under your weight like the whole place might give up and bury you. Eventually you find what you're looking for, a passage leading beneath the church. You listen. Voices above. Footsteps. A chair scraping. You climb up carefully and peek through a loose board under the floorboards. And there he is. Spider Callahan. Alone. No guards. No preacher. Just him and a bottle sitting at the altar like a man waiting for confession. He's writing something in a journal. Leather-bound, pages yellowed at the edges. Every now and then, he glances toward the pulpit like he's rehearsing a speech. You should kill him. Right here, right now. That's what the bounty says. That's what justice demands. But instead you listen. He mutters to himself. They won't understand it now. Not yet. But in 10 years they'll say this was where it started. You slip back into the tunnel, shaking. You don't know what's worse, that he believes it, or that he might be right. Back in your hideout, you sketch a quick map of the patrols. You plan your exit. You know the marshals must be coming. Landry got your wire. But the question is, how long will it take? And will they come in quietly, or bring a war down on the whole town? You don't sleep that night. Instead, you sneak into the telegraph office and send one more message. Jericho taken. Spider inside. Militia active. Civilian risk high. Do not engage without full force. Awaiting orders. The operator never sees you. You're gone before the machine finishes clicking. The next morning, Spider takes the stage in front of the church. He's traded the usual coat for a cleaner one. He's shaved. He looks somehow more dangerous cleaned up, like a man about to be immortalized. He gives a speech. It starts slow, talks about betrayal, about the federal government abandoning the frontier, about railroad barons stealing land, marshals taking bribes, and banks turning farmers into beggars. Then it turns. He announces the formation of the Frontier Free State, a new territory, independent, self-governed, protected. There are cheers. Actual cheers. The townsfolk are buying it. Some wide-eyed, some hesitant, but enough of them are clapping, and that's when you realise you're not just here to stop a criminal, you're here to stop a movement, and you're already losing. You wait until nightfall and sneak back into the tunnel. This time you bring a stick of dynamite. No more warnings, no more second chances. If Spider wants to build an empire on top of this church, you're going to make sure the foundation won't hold. You set the charge beneath the altar. The timer gives you 15 minutes. You crawl out and vanish into the alleys. 15 minutes to change the course of a town. Maybe the whole frontier.
Okay.
As you reach the edge of Jericho Flats, you hear the first explosion tear through the ground. Then shouts, gunfire, a bell ringing wildly. You don't look back, but you know he's alive, because the game's not over yet. Not until one of you stops breathing. You ride hard and fast into the hills west of Jericho Flats, the echo of the explosion still thundering in your skull like Judgment Day on a delay. Smoke curls into the sky behind you, mixing with the clouds, and the horse beneath you strains with every stride, lungs rasping like bellows worn thin. You don't look back, not because you're afraid of what you'll see, but because you already know. The explosion wasn't enough. You set it right, measured the powder, timed the fuse. You felt the shockwave in your teeth. The church floor would have collapsed like a sinkhole, taking the pulpit and the smug grin of Spider Callahan with it. But in your gut you can already feel it. That itch, that eerie, hollow stillness that tells you he survived, that he's already halfway into his next scheme. Maybe he wasn't even inside. Maybe he set you up to blow your last chance on a pile of wood and righteousness while he walked away clean, holding a fresh flag in one hand and a whiskey bottle in the other. He's still ahead. Always one breath, one bullet, one backdoor escape ahead. But not for long. You ride into Apache territory without blinking. No one does that lightly. It's not just the landscape, sharp and skeletal like the world cracked and left the bones behind. It's the weight of it. The history, the blood, the unmarked graves, the knowledge that trespassers often don't get second chances out here. You've heard the stories. Traders who vanished, surveyors found scalped, their tongues nailed to trees, settlers whose wagons were discovered weeks later, everything picked clean but the bones. Some of it's truth, some of it's twisted memory, most of it's just anger, earned, simmering, unhealed. You're not here to disrespect the land. You're here because Spider is. He's using it. Word is, he's struck a deal with one of the breakaway bands, Apaches who want nothing to do with the government or the reservations, who are still fighting a war long since buried by white paper and bad promises. And Spider? He knows how to use a broken promise, knows how to offer a shared enemy and a common cause. The idea of him hiding out here, using their territory like a shield, doesn't sit right. You're not about to march in and make demands. You're not that foolish. But you are going to find him. And if he's twisted any group into backing his rebellion, you're going to put an end to that alliance, one way or another. You make camp on a ridge near the Salt Hills. The stars out here don't twinkle, they burn. No towns for miles, just ridgelines, canyon mouths, and shadows that move when you're not looking. You tie your horse to a juniper bush and keep both pistols close. Sleep in shifts, listen for drums. Or worse, nothing. By sunrise you're following tracks. They're faint, Spider's not careless. But a man can't travel through this dust without leaving something behind. A scuffed boot heel, a broken branch, one bent tobacco tin half buried in the sand. You follow the trail through a ravine that locals call Coyote's Mouth. Narrow, sunless, and winding. Every step echoes. Your nerves stretch taut as violin strings. This is ambush country. The kind of place where people enter and don't walk back out. Your hand never leaves the butt of your revolver. Halfway through the pass, you find it. A warning, a spear, driven into the ground. A red cloth tied around the shaft, fluttering like a snake's tongue. You stop. Behind it, the trail splits, one path winding toward the cliffs, the other down into the valley. Spiders baited you before, but this is different. This is a message. You pick the cliff path. Takes longer, takes more nerve, and takes you straight to a lookout point, and that's when you see it. A camp, not spiders. Apache. Dozens of riders. Tents low to the ground. Smoke from cook fires rising slow and clean. Horses penned near the canyon wall. And in the centre, a figure in black talking to a man with feathers braided into his hair and paint streaked across his chest like war still matters. Spider Callahan! He's standing like he belongs there, like he's earned the right. No guards, no guns, just that smug posture of a man selling something dangerous. You duck back behind the rock, heart pounding. So this is it. He's built a real alliance, a dangerous one. You retreat before anyone sees you and circle back to higher ground. Spend hours watching, listening, waiting. Then you hear voices. 2 young Apache scouts passing beneath your ledge, speaking softly in a mix of English and their own tongue. One of them is carrying Spider's journal, the same one you saw him writing back in Jericho. You wait until they're out of sight, then descend the bluff and follow them at a distance. After a half-mile, the younger one stops to relieve himself behind a boulder. The older one walks ahead. You take your chance, step out, revolver up. Don't shout, you say, quiet and low. The boy freezes, eyes wide. I don't want to hurt you, you add. I just want that book. He nods slowly. No sudden moves. You take the journal from him, then toss a coin pouch at his feet. For your trouble. He stares at it like you handed him a rattlesnake. Then you vanish into the rocks. Back at your camp, you open the journal. The entries are dated, meticulous, full of rants and plans, names, towns, details about the territory, the rail lines, the sheriffs on the payroll. And then this. They're broken, just like us. Not savages, not villains, just men who watch their world get eaten. Same as me. They don't need to trust me. Just need to aim their guns the same direction I do. You close the book and exhale. Spider isn't just building an army, he's building a coalition. One forged from the fury of every group the government forgot. Outlaws, drifters, ex-Confederates, natives with no land left to stand on. This isn't about revenge, it's about rebirth, and he's halfway there. That night you ride east, you don't stop. You've got a new plan. If he wants to build a nation, you're going to make sure it's the shortest revolution in history. You ride like hells, licking at your boots, dust pluming behind you in long trails that vanish just as quick as they appear. The sun claws overhead, merciless and white, but you don't slow down. Not when the stakes have finally snapped into terrifying clarity. Spider Callahan isn't just another outlaw carving his initials into the underside of the world. He's a strategist, a zealot with a head for maps and a taste for martyrdom. And now, with allies bleeding in from every grudge-filled corner of the West, he's perched at the edge of something that could catch fire and burn every thread of order left on this side of the Mississippi. And you? You're the idiot who thought he could outshoot it! The nearest telegraph is in Calico Bend, a mining town that smells like sulphur and desperation. You roll in half dead, your horse wheezing and foam-lipped, and you stumble into the telegraph office looking like something scraped off a battlefield. The clerk takes one look at you and says, "You all right, mister?" "Not even close," you mutter, slapping down Spider's journal. It takes nearly 20 minutes to boil the right words down into a message the wire can carry. You tell Marshal Landry everything. The alliance, the Apache support, the movement. You include details from the journal, names, dates, supply routes, whispers of towns on the brink. And at the end you add, "If you don't strike now, we'll be answering to Callahan's flag within a year." The clerk sends the message without question. You don't sleep that night. Instead, you hole up in a rented room above the saloon, back to the wall, pistol cradled in your lap like a newborn. Every creak in the floorboards below sounds like a footstep. Every howl of wind through the shutters makes your hand twitch. You've been in shootouts, standoffs, ambushes, but nothing feels quite like this. This is dread, the kind that doesn't end when the sun comes up. By the next morning, Landry replies, "Message received. Moving forces. Need location confirmation within 48 hours. Be ready. Be ready. What does that even mean? You stare at those two words like they're mocking you. You're one man, bleeding from the seams, carrying nothing but a revolver and a stolen diary, trying to slow the rise of an outlaw kingdom that's already halfway written in stone. Ready isn't even on the menu. Still, you've got work to do. The key to stopping Spider lies in one word repeated several times in his journal. Prospect Hollow. It's not a town, not anymore. Just a few rotting buildings near an old copper vein, long abandoned after the mine collapsed and killed a dozen men. No law, no families. Just a halfway point between two bigger places that no one cares about. Which makes it perfect. According to Spider's journal, it's the intended meeting place for his inner circle. A final rally point before they move on what he calls the break. You don't know what the break is, but your gut tells you it's not metaphorical. Something's about to snap. You ride out at sunset, the desert painted in blood-red streaks, shadows crawling like ghosts behind every boulder. It takes you a day and a half to reach Prospect Hollow. By the time you see the outline of the buildings, your water's almost gone and your mind is playing tricks. The wind sounds like footsteps. The trees look like men with rifles. But you press on. You don't ride in. Not yet. You scout from the hills above, wait for night, watch the place come alive. Spider's men are already here. There's maybe 15 to 20 at most. They move with that half-disciplined swagger you've come to recognize. Too sharp to be common bandits, too loose to be soldiers. You spot familiar faces from the Jericho Flats siege. The preacher too. He's here, standing at the center of a crude bonfire, talking low to a group of men clustered like wolves. And then, there he is. Spider. He emerges from a ruined shack like he was born from its ashes, arms crossed, eyes cold. The crowd parts for him. He speaks for less than a minute, gestures to the preacher, and walks back inside. Whatever this is, it's not just a pit stop, it's a decision point, and you're going to blow it all to hell. You slide down the ridge under the cover of darkness and plant the last of your dynamite beneath the floorboards of the meeting shack. It takes all the nerve you've got. You can hear voices through the walls. Laughter, arguments, plans being traded like poker hands. Spider's in there, close enough to shoot, close enough to end, but you don't pull the trigger. Because taking Spider out now would only turn him into a legend. Number. You want him discredited. You want his empire of dirt to collapse around him while he's still alive to choke on the rubble. You slip away and backtrack to the hills, light the fuse, 30 seconds. You count every beat of your heart. At 17, the explosion tears through the shack like a fist through paper. The sky lights up. Wood and men and fire and screams shoot skyward in a beautiful, awful arc. You hear gunfire, confusion, someone yelling orders, then more gunfire. And Spider? You don't know. You ride. You ride until your horse gives out beneath you, until your throat's raw and your clothes are stiff with blood and dust. You ride until you reach a crossroads you've passed before. A place where an old oak leans over the trail and the signpost points in 3 directions. None of them good. You stop there, slide from the saddle and wait. You've sent your message. You've lit the fire. Now you wait to see who survives the smoke. Somewhere behind you, in the ashes of Prospect Hollow, Spider Callahan is either dead or reborn again in flame. Either way, you'll find him. You always do. You camp under that crooked oak at the crossroads like it's holy ground. Though there's nothing holy about the place, just the quiet, the cold, and the endless stretch of dirt in 3 directions, like fate's given you options but refuses to tell you which one leads to a bullet. The sky hangs low with bruised clouds, and your fire is little more than a flickering whisper, scared of its own smoke. You're bone-tired, worn thin. You haven't eaten in a day and a half. Your shoulders infected again, aching with every heartbeat. But you don't move. You wait. Because someone will come. Sure enough, just before dawn you hear the hoofbeats. Not many, 3 horses, maybe 4, light riders. Fast. You douse the fire, slide into the brush and pull your rifle close. The riders approach slow, careful. You squint through the grey haze of morning and spot the lead man, Marshal Landry. Behind him 2 deputies, one with a rifle slung across his chest, the other riding bareback like he was born in the saddle. They see your empty horse, glance around, and then Landry whistles low and soft. You step out. "I thought I told you to be ready," he says, dismounting. "I was," you answer, voice flat. "You're late?" He looks you over, your coat torn, your face hollow, your hands trembling from exhaustion or rage, maybe both. Then he nods once, like he understands everything without needing it said. "I got your last wire," he says, "about the Alliance, the camp, Callahan. Prospect Hollow, you say? I lit the whole thing up. Didn't stop to count bodies. He grunts. You think he's dead? You shake your head. I hope he is. But no, I don't think so. Landry pulls a flask from his coat and offers it. You take a swig. It burns like regret. He's bleeding, you say. Even if he lived, I made a dent. That camp was his nerve centre. They were planning something big. I hit them before it hatched. Landry lowers his voice. Word from the east is Spider's name is spreading. Towns he's never been to, people talking like he's Jesse James and John Brown rolled into one. He's not a hero, you snap. I know that. You know that. But the folks out there? The ones tired of being taxed by men they've never seen and shot at by ones they have? He looks like hope to them. Ugly hope, sure, but still hope. You feel sick. He's right. Spider doesn't need to win to be dangerous. He just needs to inspire. People will die for a lie if it's easier to believe than the truth. You tell Landry about the journal, the Apache Alliance, the towns marked for takeover, the names, dozens of them, of men pledged to the cause, mercenaries, ex-soldiers, half of them already on bounty posters themselves. He listens. Then he says something that chills you more than the morning air. We need to make an example. You know what he means. Spider's movement won't die with a firefight. It won't die in a blaze of glory. It'll die with humiliation, exposure. Turn the legend back into a man. Make the people see sweat and fear and blood instead of prophecy. But first, you have to catch him alive. And for that, you need to know where he's running. You spend the next day following the trail out of Prospect Hollow. Landry sends his deputies west to check local homesteads, and you head south with nothing but a half-eaten biscuit and a canteen full of hope. The landscape changes fast, flatlands giving way to jagged stone and scrub brush, then low ridges and slot canyons carved by water long gone. You find a fresh boot print near a creek bed, then a discarded saddle blanket, then a man tied to a tree, wrists raw, face swollen like he fought back too long. You recognize him, one of Spider's lieutenants. You saw him at Jericho Flats, grinning through a cigar as he tossed out a deputy's badge like a poker chip. He's not grinning now. You kneel beside him. His eyes flutter open. Callahan, you say. Where did he go? He gurgles something, blood bubbles on his lips. You press a canteen to his mouth. He spits it out. You sigh. Pull out the flask Landry gave you. This, he drinks. After a moment he mutters, fell back. North. Took what he had left. Said he's got a hole. A deep hole. Where they can't follow. Then he goes limp. You bury him. Not for him, but for you. The last thing this land needs is another corpse rotting in the sun with no name and no peace. You double back and find Landry already waiting at the crossroads. He's heading north, you say. Something about a deep hole. Landry narrows his eyes. The Devil's Cellar, you frown. Sounds like a good place to die. It's a canyon. Real narrow, real deep. There's caves, old ones. Some say they go on forever. You hole up in there, you could wait out a siege for months. We can't wait months. No, he says, we can't. He sends his last rider east to call in more men. Says he'll ride north with you himself. For all his age and weight and government-issued authority, Landry straps on a rifle and rides like he means it. You don't like many marshals, but you like him. By sunset, you're at the edge of the canyon. The Devil's Cellar lives up to its name. It yawns open in the middle of the desert like a wound. No wind, no birds, just a black mouth and the smell of stone and secrets. You spot a few tracks, a few shell casings, and deeper down, the flicker of a fire. You look at Landry. He nods. We go in at dawn. You settle in at the rim, staring into the dark. Somewhere down there, Spider Callahan is licking his wounds. Maybe praying, maybe laughing, and in the morning you're going in after him, one way or another. The desert is a strange place before dawn. It's not quiet. It hums, low and alive, like the world's exhaling one long, slow breath. Coyotes cry in the far-off hills. Pebbles shift beneath your boots even when you're not moving. The wind carries the scent of something sour and mineral, the way it always does near old places where men once dug too deep. You and Marshal Landry sit on the edge of the Devil's Cellar, staring into a gorge so black it feels like a dream you can't quite remember. Somewhere down there is the man you've hunted across half the frontier, Spider Callahan, broken but not beaten, wounded but still dangerous. A rabid prophet preaching rebellion through a cracked grin and a bullet hole in his coat. Landry checks his rifle, clicks the cylinder, doesn't say much. He's not the speech-giving type. Which is fine, neither are you. You both know what has to happen. You descend just after first light, ropes cutting into your palms, the canyon walls close enough to make you feel like you're being swallowed. The air turns colder the deeper you go. Each echo of your boots sounds like gunfire in that tight, narrow passage. You keep close to the wall, rifle slung, revolver ready. Landry takes the lead. His movements are sharp, measured, no wasted motion. This isn't his first cave crawl. At the bottom, the path opens into a series of low tunnels, natural caves stretching off in several directions like roots through rock. It's darker down here, but someone's been busy. You spot torches, burnt-out stubs wedged into cracks, even a set of boots tossed near a wall, soles worn thin. There are signs of life, movement, activity. And then you see the first body, one of Spider's men, at least what's left of him, riddled with bullets, rope marks on his wrists. Looks like he ran, got caught, and died fast. Maybe there's a traitor in the ranks. Or maybe Spider's finally run out of patience. Either way, it tells you something important. Things are falling apart. You press on, the tunnel forks, you and Landry split up. Not ideal, but the only way to cover ground. You mark your path with chalk on the wall, a habit you picked up back when you were chasing a bank robber through a flooded silver mine and nearly died trying to retrace your steps in pitch black. You promised yourself you'd never make that mistake again. Some promises stick. You walk for what feels like hours. The light from your lantern plays tricks on the walls, turning shadows into faces, cracks into movement. At one point you stop, convinced you heard breathing that wasn't yours, but there's nothing, just the cave, watching. And then you find the room. It's not big, not fancy, just a natural chamber with a fire still smouldering in the centre. Smoke curls up toward a fissure in the ceiling. There's a blanket, a canteen, a pile of maps. And on the far side, half hidden in the dark, is Spider Callahan. He's sitting with his back to the wall, knees bent, rifle across his lap. His eyes flicker to yours and settle there like he's not the least bit surprised. You raise your weapon. He doesn't move. "You blew up my church," he says. "You declared war," you reply. He laughs, hoarse and bitter. "I never wanted war. I wanted freedom." "No," you say. "You wanted control. And you wanted people to call it freedom so you could sleep at night." He shrugs. "Maybe." You step closer, boots crunching on gravel. Your revolver stays pointed, steady as your breath. Jericho Flats, Prospect Hollow, the alliance with the Apaches, the fire, the speeches, the flags. You built something, and you lost it. He looks down at his hands. "You don't understand," he mutters. "I was born in a world that said I didn't matter. That said men like me were either criminals or corpses. I decided not to choose. You chose something worse." He stands slowly, not reaching for the rifle. Not yet, just staring. "You think I'm the problem," he says, "but I'm just the symptom." You pause, because maybe he's right. The frontier is a sickness, one built on theft and fire and half-whispered lies carved into deeds and wanted posters. Spider isn't some mutation. He's the natural evolution of everything no one wanted to admit the West was becoming. But that doesn't mean he gets to win. "I need you alive," you say. He smiles again, sad this time. "And what if I don't want to be?" "I don't care." He moves fast. Faster than you expect.
No.
Not for the rifle, but for the knife tucked into his boot. You shoot. Once. The bullet hits his shoulder. He drops the blade, grunts, falls back against the wall, clutching the wound. "I should have killed you back in Jericho," he says through gritted teeth. "You tried." He glares at you, but the fire's fading. You can see it in his eyes. "You're not going to make me a trophy," he mutters. "Not going to parade me into some marshal's office and collect your reward." "I'm not doing this for the money." "Then what?" he asks. "You think you're saving something?" You don't answer, because you're not sure anymore. You bind his wound, not gently. He curses, spits, threatens. But he doesn't fight. He knows it's over. The chase, the movement, maybe even the man he tried to be. Landry finds you both an hour later. He doesn't smile, doesn't even nod. Just kneels to check the wound, then looks you square in the eye. "You really did it," he says. "No," you reply, "he did." They drag Spider out of the canyon at dawn, shackled, bloodied, quiet. The climb is slow, brutal, but he never complains. You ride east with Landry and a half-dozen marshals, watching the sun rise through the smoke haze on the horizon. Somewhere behind you, the last embers of Spider's dream are turning to ash. You should feel triumphant, but mostly you just feel tired. Spider watches the desert roll by from the prison wagon, and at one point he calls out to you. You know this won't stop. Someone else will come along, someone smarter, meaner. Maybe, you say. But they won't be me, you nod. That's the point. He leans back, eyes half-lidded. You think people will remember this? I do, you say, just not the way you wanted. The thing about bringing a man like Spider Callahan in alive is that no one quite knows what to do with him. For weeks he's been a myth, a rumour that rode on wind and wildfire, whispered in saloons and shouted in sheriff's offices, scribbled onto wanted posters nailed crooked on dusty walls. He was the outlaw that couldn't be caught, the preacher with the pistol, the revolutionary with charm in his voice and a revolver in his soul. And now he's sitting in a cage, legs shackled, shoulder stitched, eyes half-lidded as he bounces inside a prison wagon like any other two-bit bandit on his way to the gallows. He's not dead, not yet, but he's not free either, and it's driving everyone mad. Marshal Landry has a plan, of course. He always does. You're to escort the prisoner to a federal court over in Ellsworth City, where judges wear polished boots and carry pens like bayonets. A full company of marshals will meet you halfway. Spider will be tried. Publicly. Officially. Nothing hidden. Nothing quiet. No assassination on the trail. No bullet in the dark. They want the trial to be the death blow. They want him to hang, sure, Landry tells you over coffee at the edge of camp one night, the firelight flickering across both your faces. But more than that, they want the people to see him fall. In daylight. In chains. You nod. You understand. A bullet might kill a man, but a trial kills a myth, and Spider was a myth for far too long. Still, the road to Ellsworth isn't paved with justice and good intentions. It's wild country. Open plains and scorched hills, wagon tracks barely carved through land that hasn't forgotten how to bleed. You ride ahead of the prison cart, close enough to see Spider's silhouette through the barred window, but far enough to keep eyes on the terrain. You half expect an ambush. His loyalists. Some desperate last gasp attempt to free him. But it doesn't come. Not on the first day, not on the second. It's on the third day that things start to feel wrong. You wake to a silence too complete. No birds, no wind, just a hush that presses in on your skull like a fever. You step out of your tent, stretch your back and notice the tracks. Fresh. Circling the camp. Rider tracks. At least 4. Close enough to count the horseshoes, and not yours. Landry, you call. He's already awake, rifle in hand, looking toward the hills. They're watching, he says, flat. You follow his gaze, see nothing, but you feel it. Eyes, hearts beating in rhythm with the earth. You and the other marshals tighten the formation, double the watch, ride slower, tense, like prey crossing an open field under the gaze of a hawk. Spider's not concerned. He sits in the wagon like he's on a Sunday ride, lips curled into that little half-smile that always means he knows something you don't. He's said nothing since the arrest. Just watched. Judged. Waited. At one point he locks eyes with you through the bars. You feel it, he asks? The rumble? That itch behind your ears? You don't respond. He grins. They're coming. Your men are gone, you reply. We scattered them. He leans back, eyes closed. Not all of them. Later that day you find the first body. A courier. Young. Face down in the dirt with a message still clutched in his hand. Throat slit. Clean. Efficient. The message, when you pry it loose, is a coded route. A detour from the main road to Ellsworth through the Crow Ridge foothills. It's the path you're taking now, which means someone new. Someone inside your circle is feeding Spider's people your movements. Landry reads the message jaw tight. Leak in the chain, or bait, you mutter. Could be both. You suggest a trap. Landry agrees. That night, under a crescent moon, you stage a fake breakdown. The wagon stops. Axle pulled out. Horses corralled. A small fire lit. The camp looks vulnerable, exposed. Perfect for a midnight assault. You and Landry and 3 marshals hide in the rocks nearby, rifles at the ready. You wait and wait. Nothing. Until a shadow moves, then another. Figures creeping low. 3 of them, maybe 4, knives glinting. No guns. These are assassins, not soldiers. They want it quiet. You let them get close. Then Landry fires the first shot. It's chaos from there. Yells, bullets, dirt spraying, hooves panicking. 2 of the attackers go down immediately. 1 turns to run and is dropped by a single shot from your revolver. The last one, wounded, tries to crawl away. You catch him. Drag him to the fire where Spider watches through the bars amused. Who sent you, you ask? The man spits blood. Landry kneels. You're looking at hanging either way, friend. Make your peace. The man just laughs. Hanging? You think this ends at a rope? Callahan don't need us. We're just sparks. The fire's already lit. You let Landry finish the interrogation. You can't stand to hear another man speak in riddles like his ribs are made of prophecy. When it's over, the body count is 4, and Spider, he hasn't moved. But he speaks again, just before you saddle up. You can't kill a wildfire, he says. You ride on. No one speaks for miles. Ellsworth is 3 days away. You don't know if you'll make it, but you do know this. Spider Callahan won't die quietly, and neither will the madness he's left in his wake. By the time the spires of Ellsworth City rise into view, red and gold against the morning sun, you've aged a year in 3 days. Or at least that's how it feels in your bones. Every mile from Crow Ridge to this moment has been a tightrope walk with a storm beneath it. Between the ambushes, the shadow riders, the fever that claimed one of Landry's men, and the quiet smugness blooming behind Spider Callahan's eyes, the journey has stretched you thinner than a prayer on a battlefield. Ellsworth looms big, bigger than any town you've seen in months. Brick buildings, telegraph poles that stand like rifles pointed skyward, iron railings, wide boulevards, judges with polished boots, and newspaper boys shouting the kind of headlines that make blood pressure rise. Civilization, they'd call it. Safety, if you ask someone who's never had to draw a pistol at breakfast. But to you, it's just the place where legends go to die. And this one, this myth named Spider, is about to face the one thing more dangerous than bullets or bounty hunters. A courtroom. The wagon carrying Spider rattles through the main street like a funeral procession for truth. People line the sidewalks, wide-eyed, hats in hands. Some spit when they see him. Others stare like they're watching a ghost. One woman actually throws a Bible at the wagon. It bounces off the bars and lands in the dirt, pages fluttering like wounded birds. Spider doesn't flinch, just leans his head against the bars and smiles like he's being driven to his coronation. Landry handles the paperwork. You stand at the steps of the courthouse, hands on your hips, dust caked into every crease of your coat. You should feel something. Pride, maybe. Satisfaction. Instead, you just feel hollow, like you're a tool that's been used too many times, dulled by repetition, and soaked through with blood that doesn't belong to you. Inside, Spider is placed in a holding cell so clean it almost seems offended by the man it now contains. Iron bars, concrete walls, a single cot. He doesn't speak. He hasn't since the attack, but he watches, always watches. A crowd gathers for the hearing. Word's gotten out fast. People want to see the face of the man who almost started a war in the desert, who took towns by charm and gunfire, who strung wanted posters across a territory and dared the law to come find him. You sit in the back, hat low over your face, feeling every eye flick toward you with curiosity. That's him, someone whispers. The bounty hunter who brought in Callahan. They don't say your name. You don't blame them. Spider's name has eclipsed everyone else's. Even now. The judge arrives, stern-faced, the kind who carves sentences into stone rather than speaks them. He begins with the usual formality, then moves into the charges: arson, treason, conspiracy, theft, multiple counts of murder, impersonation of a federal officer, obstruction of justice, sedition, and about a dozen other sins with long names and longer punishments. Spider sits through it all silent. Then, when asked how he pleads, he stands, straightens his back, smiles, and says, "Guilty!" The courtroom gasps, even the judge blinks, but Spider's not done. "Guilty," he repeats, "of all of it, and I'd do it again." The judge bangs the gavel, orders silence, but Spider keeps talking. "You want me to apologize?" he says. "For what? For shaking a dead system awake? For standing up when every good man laid down and let the banks take their land? For giving people something to believe in?" "You gave them bullets and graves," the judge snaps. "And hope," Spider counters. "Hope with teeth." You watch Landry. He doesn't flinch, but his jaw is tight. The judge declares the trial will continue the next day. No verdict yet. No sentence. Not yet. Back outside, the town buzzes. Newspapers already spinning their stories. Protesters shout on the courthouse steps, some waving flags with Spider's face crudely drawn onto them, others calling for his immediate execution. The whole place is boiling. Landry calls a meeting that night. "We can't hold him here long," he says, lighting a cigar. "The court wants to make a spectacle, but if we wait too long, he'll become a cause." "You hear those chants out there?" You nod. You heard them loud and clear. "Then what?" you ask. "Just shoot him behind the stable?" "No," Landry replies. "We finish the trial. Do it proper, then hang him in the square." "You think that'll stop what he started?" "I think it's the only shot we've got." That night you dream of the desert burning, of Spider standing tall on a platform of bones preaching to a crowd made of shadows. Your face is among them. So is Landry's. So are the dead. You wake drenched in sweat. You go for a walk. The town is quiet, too quiet. Lanterns flicker in windows. Guards posted near the courthouse, near the jail. You check in, just to be sure. Spider's gone. You stop cold. The bars of the cell are twisted, melted, not broken. There's no blood, no struggle. Just the empty cot and a note pinned to the wall with a railroad spike. "Told you I wasn't finished." Panic erupts within the hour. The judge calls for lockdown. Landry goes pale. You just stand there, silent. Because deep down you knew this would happen. You felt it in your bones. Spider wasn't the kind of man who ended in a cell. He's the kind that finishes what he starts, or dies trying. And now he's out there. Again. And it's worse than before. Because this time he doesn't have to build anything. This time all he has to do is destroy. There's a silence that follows a jailbreak. A kind of eerie, stunned lull before anyone finds their footing again. No one speaks loudly. No one moves too fast. It's the kind of silence you get at the edge of a cliff, when the ground's still trembling from something massive that just fell off. Spider Callahan has vanished from a locked cell in a federal courthouse. Not slipped away, not escaped through clever keys or a look-the-other-way guard. The iron was twisted, melted almost, as if the laws of man and metal had simply stopped applying the second he decided they no longer mattered. You stare at the spike in the wall for a long time. Not because of what it says, but because of what it doesn't. It's not a threat, it's not a message, it's a promise. He's not just running again, he's burning the map behind him. Marshal Landry is already barking orders, moving bodies, shutting down the town like a general under siege. Deputies are sent in every direction. Riders scramble through the gates with wanted posters, flapping from their saddlebags like broken flags. The judge's face is purple with fury, but even he can't make a ruling on thin air. You lean against a pillar and feel every ounce of weight you've been carrying since this mess began to settle into your ribs. You caught him, brought him in, sat through the trial, and still, the man walked out under everyone's nose like it was just another Tuesday. You're not even angry anymore. You're tired. You head to the saloon because it's the only building in Ellsworth with lights still burning and nobody shouting. Inside, the place is full of murmurs, speculation, wild stories, folks claiming to have seen Spider walk right out the front door dressed like a priest, or carried off on a white horse by followers cloaked in smoke. One man swears Spider turned into a hawk and flew away. Another's drunk enough to believe it. You take your usual spot at the bar. The barkeep paws without asking. He watches you a moment, then says, "You going to go after him?" You don't answer. Because of course you are. Of course you're going to chase him. Again. There's no other choice, no backup, no cavalry coming over the ridge. This isn't about justice anymore. It's about balance. You're the only thing keeping the scale from tipping all the way into chaos, and deep down you're starting to think maybe that was always your job, even if nobody said it out loud. You finish the drink, toss a coin, and walk out. The trail is cold for the first 20 miles. No prints, no rumours, no ghost riders sprinting ahead to carry the word. But near the edge of a canyon pass called Widow's Teeth, you find something wedged into the rocks. A boot, worn, weathered, and lined with blood. Not Spider's size. A deputy, maybe. You search the area and find signs of a scuffle. A pistol buried in the sand. A piece of torn fabric caught on a thorn bush. A shattered horseshoe. He had help. You find the body a little farther on, throat slit, clean, eyes open. The same emptiness you've seen too many times now. The same chill you feel in your spine every time Spider gets a little farther ahead. You bury the deputy. You keep moving. By day 3, the trail shifts from empty to taunting. You stop at a halfway post in the middle of nowhere, just a watering hole and a shack held together with rusted nails and prayer, and find a page from a newspaper nailed to the door. It's an article about the trial, about Spider's smile as he pled guilty, his speech. Scrawled across the article in red ink, "You can't hang a man who's already a martyr. You rip it down. Your horse snorts like even he's getting tired of this, but you ride on. Because something is beginning to stir out here. It's in the way people talk, when they talk, in the silence that follows his name. The lawmen are nervous, but it's the farmers and ranchers and drifters who scare you more. They look hopeful, like Spider did something noble, like his escape was divine, inevitable. And you remember what Landry said, you don't just kill the man, you kill the myth. But that part's slipping through your fingers. You reach a rail junction town called Burntree late on the 5th day. It's barely more than a loading dock and a few houses nestled in the canyon's edge, but it's bustling tonight. Smoke from chimneys, horses being brushed down, music pouring out of the saloon like someone's trying to pretend the world isn't coming undone. You check the post outside the general store, and there it is, a new poster. Spider Callahan. Wanted still, but now $25,000. And something else. A stamp. Federal enemy number 1. Capture by any means. You tear it down just as a voice calls behind you. You missed him by a day. You turn. An old rancher, long grey beard, dust-covered hat, leaning against a crate like his bones gave out last week. Said he needed supplies, paid double, left heading west. Alone? The old man shrugs. Had 2 others with him. Young, scared. One called him Brother Callahan. You don't reply. There's nothing to say. You spend the night in Burntree and you dream of ash. Of the West burning itself down not from war or bullets, but belief. Of Spider preaching from a hilltop, his words not even words anymore, just fire. And of you, somewhere far away, trying to stamp out embers with your bare hands. At dawn, you ride west, back into the madness, back into the hunt. Because Spider Callahan might have turned himself into a symbol, but you're going to turn him into an ending. You ride through a landscape that feels increasingly unreal, as if the world itself is beginning to warp under the weight of the story unfolding across it. What used to be just open country, dry gullies, rolling brush, a vulture or two squabbling over something rotten, now feels like a stage. Every rock looks like a rifleman's perch. Every shack in the distance might be another safe house. And every set of tracks you follow feels like a thread pulled from a tapestry that's starting to unravel. The myth of Spider Callahan has stretched itself across the territory like a second sun, brighter, hotter, and far more likely to burn you alive. You're heading into gold country now, the part of the West that still glimmers with promise, even though most of it's been picked clean by generations of desperation. Boomtowns that once pulsed with dynamite and whiskey now sit like hollow bones, their saloons full of ghosts and floorboards that don't creak so much as groan. It's here, in the skeletal remains of these gold rush dreams, that men like Spider find places to hide. Or worse, places to plant roots. The first sign is a town called Whetstone. It isn't on most maps anymore, not since the mine collapse a decade ago sent half the saloons sinking into a fault line and the rest of the population packing. But now it's back. You roll in near dusk and spotlights in windows, lanterns, fresh wagon tracks, even a rope line strung between buildings, with laundry flapping in the wind like somebody's trying to pretend it's a normal place again. And outside the general store, another poster, not a wanted poster, a recruitment notice. The Frontier Free State welcomes you, it reads in crisp, bold print. A land for the forgotten, the betrayed, and the brave. No taxes, no marshals, no kings but the land and the man who tends it. And at the bottom, in delicate red ink, Brother Callahan, you spit in the dust. Whetstone has been taken, not by force, but by suggestion. You can feel it in the way the people move, not afraid exactly, but cautious. Like a family who's just taken in a very charming, very dangerous guest and doesn't want to say the wrong thing in front of him. You ask a boy near the stable if Spider came through. He nods once, silent. That's all. You ride on. Next is a place called Denton Fork, or what's left of it. Used to be a watering post for miners and gamblers. Now it's burned out. 2 buildings still stand. A church, barely, and a bar with no roof. But nailed to the burnt beam above the bar entrance is something you don't expect. A body. One of the bounty hunters who vanished last week. Strung up, skinned, branded. The mark on his chest. A circle with an X through it. You've seen that mark before, carved into fences around Spider's earliest camps. No clear meaning, but always near where violence bloomed. This isn't just a message, it's a warning. You bury the man with your own hands, no ceremony, just dirt, sweat, and a quiet apology neither of you believes. That night you sleep in the ruins of the saloon, back against a wall, gun across your lap. You don't light a fire. The wind howls. Somewhere nearby, coyotes tear into something they didn't have to kill themselves. You think of Spider, of the people now calling him brother, of the way his smile lingered in the courtroom even when the cell door slammed shut. He knew he'd escape. Hell, maybe the trial was the plan all along. He's not hiding anymore, he's expanding. By the time you reach Blister Ridge, it's full daylight. The town is crawling with movement. People hammering together makeshift walls, women sewing flags, children barefoot chasing pigs between cabins. It's not a town anymore. It's a settlement, a colony. And on a central post where the sheriff's notice board used to hang, there's a tall hand-painted sign. Welcome to the Free State of the West. Below it another sign. Martial authority not recognized. You ride through like you belong. No one stops you. No one greets you either. These people aren't friendly. They're committed. And that's worse. You spot at least 10 armed men just within eyesight, pretending to mend fences, pretending to talk about supplies, but every one of them watching you with the quiet calculation of someone prepared to shoot if you step wrong. You tie your horse outside the old jail, now converted into a free supply depot. Inside it smells like tobacco and sweat. A man with a ledger offers you food, boots or bullets in exchange for loyalty. What does that mean, you ask? He shrugs. Just a name on the page. You leave. Behind the jail you find something else. A wagon branded with the seal of the US Marshal Service. The seal's been slashed. A bullet hole right through the star. There's dried blood on the floorboards. Spider's people aren't just recruiting. They're cleaning up after the law. You ride hard again. This time toward a canyon range called Gravel Jaw, where you once chased a horse thief into a den of vipers, literally. It's the kind of place only men with no future go, and Spider's future is catching up to him. You camp just outside in the shadow of a boulder shaped like a crouching bear. From there you can see smoke in the distance, campfires, dozens of them, a temporary city hidden in the rocks. You find a trail up the ridge, quiet, loose stones, half-visible footprints. At the top you spot it, the main camp, tents, guards, a preacher's platform built from wagon wood, at least 30 people, maybe more. This isn't a hideout, it's a capital. And there, near the largest tent with a rifle slung across his back and a bandaged hand resting on the hilt of a knife, is Spider Callahan himself, smiling, alive, unbothered, as if he's been waiting for you. You don't move, you don't breathe, you just watch. Because now you understand something terrible. You didn't delay the rise of Spider Callahan. You delivered it, by chasing him, by catching him, by proving to the world that even the most wanted man in the territory could stand tall, give a speech, and walk away in chains only to break them again. You gave him his legend, and now, to fix it, you're going to have to break him all over again. You stay perched on that ridge above Graveljaw until the sun sinks low and bleeds across the desert like an open wound. Down below, Spider Callahan's camp pulses with quiet energy, lanterns glowing in tidy rows, silhouettes moving from tent to tent with purpose, guards walking in loops tight enough to say they've drilled. You watch men unload crates marked with military stamps, pry them open to reveal rifles, ammunition, even powder kegs. You see young boys carrying firewood, women tending stew pots that could feed an army, and in the centre of it all, always Spider. Not hiding, not afraid. He walks through the camp like a man who's already won, and maybe, in some sick way, he has. You're watching a myth become a government. No longer just a man with a gun and a sermon, now a symbol with a following, land, resources. His flags hang from wagon wheels and broken fences, black cloth with that same X in a circle you saw branded into the bounty hunter's chest in Denton Fork. A symbol without a clear meaning but loaded with power. It speaks to pain, defiance, a refusal to be forgotten. You can see how he's done it. The speeches, the smile, the way he never begs and always listens. You remember when you watched him in that courtroom, how even his silence turned heads. Spider doesn't need to fire the first shot anymore. He just has to step forward and the bullet follows. You know going in tonight would be suicide, but you're past the point of being cautious. This ends here. You wait until full dark. The stars blink open above you, and the wind picks up just enough to carry sound in the wrong direction. Your direction. Perfect. You descend the ridge quiet, careful. The stones shift underfoot like bones. Every step closer to that camp is another beat of your heart that you might not get back. You reach the edge just as one of the perimeter guards rounds the corner. You don't hesitate, knife up quick and silent. He drops without a sound. You drag him into the brush, check his pockets, extra cartridges, a map, and a tiny leather-bound book with 3 names inside. None of them yours. You move deeper, past the storage wagons, past the tent where 2 men are snoring loud enough to wake the dead, until you reach the fire circle at the camp's heart. And there he is, Spider. Sitting by the flames, coat unbuttoned, boots scuffed, bandage on his hand now dark with dried blood. He's alone, no guards, no followers, just him and the firelight licking at his face. Like he knew you'd come. You step forward, gun in hand. "I should shoot you," you say, voice low. He doesn't flinch, just looks up, calm as a preacher before the altar. "You've been trying to for months," he says. "You circle the fire, keep distance. You escaped custody. That's another noose around your neck." "Another one?" He chuckles. "You think I haven't lived with rope in the mirror every day for the past 10 years? "I think you're stalling," you say. "For what, a rescue?" "No," he replies. "For you." He gestures to a log across from him. "Sit." You look tired. You don't sit. "Why are you here, Spider?" you ask. "Why this?" You could have disappeared. Mexico, Canada, anywhere. But you stayed. You built this. He leans back. "Because I'm tired of running. Because I've seen too many towns left to rot. Too many families buried because some railroad deal made a piece of land worth killing for. And because if a man like me doesn't stand up, no one else will, you spit into the dirt. You're not a hero. You're a killer with a better vocabulary." He nods. "Fair. But that's still more than most." You shake your head. "You're building this whole thing on blood." "And what was the West built on before me?" he asks, voice rising. "Look around you. Every town, every stretch of rail, every piece of land was bought with someone's bones. At least I'm honest about it." You level the gun at him. "I'm taking you in." Alive, if possible. He doesn't move, doesn't blink. "You won't make it out of this camp." "Maybe not," you say, "but I'll try." He stares at you for a long moment. The fire cracks between you. Then he sighs and leans forward. "You've been chasing me so long," he says. "You ever stop to wonder who you are without me?" "I'm not like you," you reply. "I know," he says. "That's why I've always liked you." You step forward, close enough to grab him, if it weren't for the weight of the rifles you know are pointed at you from the dark. The quiet movement behind the tents, the men in the shadows who've been waiting for this moment. Spider watches your eyes, sees you realize it. "You walked into a city," he says gently, "not a camp. And cities defend their own." Then he whistles. You don't wait. You throw yourself backward as the first shot cracks past your ear. You roll behind a crate, return fire blind. The camp explodes with motion, boots slamming into dirt, voices yelling, more gunshots lighting up the night like fireworks no one wanted. You fight your way out like a devil, ducking and weaving, 2 bullets clipping your coat, 1 nicking your thigh. You climb the ridge on blood and adrenaline, firing into shadows until your revolver clicks dry. When you reach the top, breathless and bleeding, you look back. The camp is chaos, fires spreading, people running. But Spider stands near the preacher's platform untouched, still smiling. He raises a hand to you, not in surrender, in farewell. You don't stop riding until your horse nearly collapses beneath you. You stitch your leg by lantern light, teeth gritted, shirt shoved into your mouth so the screaming doesn't draw wolves. You wrap it with a belt and keep going. You know what comes next. Spider has built a nation from ash and rage, and if you don't tear it down soon, it'll spread. To every boomtown, every ranch, every boy with a father buried beneath a tax lien and a bottle of whiskey. You tried to stop him with bullets. Now you'll have to use something sharper. You limp into dry water 3 days later, barely conscious, and held together by whiskey, stubbornness, and a bit of borrowed luck. The town's not much. 1 street wide, 2 saloons, and a telegraph post with a chair out front that hasn't been moved since the war ended. But it has walls, people, and a doc who owes you a favour from that time you pulled his son out of a bar brawl gone sideways. He sets your leg, pulls the bullet out with something that looks suspiciously like a fireplace poker, and gives you laudanum you pretend to take but spit out when he's not looking. Pain reminds you you're alive. That's about all that's keeping you grounded now. You stay in dry water for 5 days, watching from the shadows as word spreads like rot. The town's paper runs the headline, "The Prophet Returns." Some clerks reprinted Spider Callahan's Declaration of Sovereignty on the back, his speech about the Free State, about redemption through rebellion, about building something pure from the bones of a broken country. It's written with just enough poetry to sound noble and just enough venom to stick. You see men reading it with squinted eyes and tight jaws, like it says everything they've been thinking but never dared to say aloud. And that's the problem. Spider isn't just popular now, he's relatable. You meet a cattleman on your second day in town. Big man, hands like tree roots, eyes tired from too many debts and not enough rain. He tells you the bank's about to take his land, says his father died trying to pay off the same loan, says the lawmen never showed up when rustlers bled his herd dry last year. Then he looks at you and says, "If this Callahan fella's serious, maybe it's time we had something new." You want to argue. You want to tell him who Spider really is. The lies, the blood, the bodies in Denton Fork and the betrayal at Jericho Flats. But you don't. Because in that moment you understand something deep and terrible. They don't care. They don't care if Spider's hands are stained. They care that he speaks in a language they recognise. The law failed them. The banks failed them. And now, even if he burns down half the world doing it, they'll follow the first man who promises he can give them something else. You wire Landry from the Telegraph Post. Your message is short. Spider's raising a militia. He's got half of gravel country. More joining every day. You need to move. Now. Bring the whole damn army. The operator blinks when he finishes typing. Think it's that bad? He asks. You don't answer. Because no, it's worse. You spend the night sharpening your knife, going over maps with a bottle of rye and a chipped lantern. You trace every canyon, every town between dry water and the red hills where Spider's people are spreading like ants from a cracked hive. You mark the old mining routes, the telegraph lines, the watering holes. Spider's not just building an army, he's positioning it, and you can feel it in your bones. Something big is coming. You decide to head east the next morning, where rumour says a former Confederate artillery officer is now flying Spider's flag above his ranch. Word is, the man has a stockpile of cannons the Union never bothered to collect, and Spider's sweet-talking him into bringing them to Graveljaw. You don't get far. At a pass near Deadmare Bluff, you find a marshal's body hanging from a tree. You recognise him, Marshal Cooper, kind, green, only 2 years in the badge. You shared whiskey with him once after a botched cattle raid. His boots are missing, his badge is pinned to the tree above him, nailed there with a knife through the star. Spider's calling card now. You cut him down, bury him under rocks and whisper something that might have once been a prayer. Then you find a scrap of paper in his coat. It's a sketch, a map more like. You recognise the landmarks, a bend in the river, a set of rock formations called the Widow's Crown, a red X drawn across the whole thing, with one word scribbled beneath, sermon. It's going to happen there. Spider's next big move. You ride hard, cutting off the trail and skimming the edges of outlaw country to avoid his patrols. Twice, you're nearly spotted. Once, you sleep in a cave with a cougar watching you from the other end, just close enough to make you consider whether being mauled would be less painful than continuing this hunt. When you reach Widow's Crown, the sky's the colour of lead, and the wind's carrying ash from some distant fire. There's already a crowd, dozens of them, maybe more. You don't ride in, you climb. The crown is a set of ridges shaped like teeth, with a natural amphitheatre below, perfect for echoing voices. Spider knows the land, knows how to use it. From your perch you watch as he steps onto a raised platform, hands spread, long coat catching in the breeze like a preacher come to baptise bullets. And the people cheer, not wild, not fanatical, steady, like church, like belief. He speaks. His voice carries up the ridge like thunder on slow legs. You don't catch every word, but what you hear makes your stomach knot. The Free State was never about me. It was about you. About what you've lost. Your homes, your fathers, your names. I didn't build this. I just said it out loud. They erupt when he finishes. No guns fired, no flags raised. But a movement. Solidified. You retreat before you're spotted, rage burning under your ribs like coals left too long in the fire. He's no longer recruiting, he's organising. You ride back towards civilization with a single goal in your mind. Spider can't be stopped with bullets. He has to be broken, publicly, irrevocably. You're going to drag him into the light and make the people who follow him see. Not the myth, not the preacher, just the man. You don't sleep anymore, not really. Not the way a sane person should. You drift off in short bursts, maybe 20 minutes at a time, but it's not rest. It's strategy with your eyes closed. In the quiet moments between dreams, you see maps, faces, routes. You see Spider Callahan smiling that quiet, unbearable smile, as another town swears allegiance to the so-called Free State. You hear him say, "You ever stop to wonder who you are without me?" And now you're starting to wonder too. Because as much as you hate him, as much as you've bled and clawed and broken yourself to stop him, he's the only man in the territory who sees the West the same way you do. Lawless, decaying, held together with twine and whiskey and bad paper promises. The only difference is, he wants to rule it. You just want to survive it. You ride to Red Hollow with a plan. It's a border town. Not in the official sense, there's no line drawn in the dirt, but you can feel it. Spider's influence runs right up to its doorstep. The people are cautious but not yet converted. There's still a sheriff here, still some loose grip on law. If you're going to strike, if you're going to start whatever it is this is going to become, it has to be from here. The last candle before the blackout. You arrive mid-morning. No one greets you. A boy watches you from the rooftop of the post office, a rifle across his knees. A dog limps across the road and disappears behind the undertaker's shop. You tie your horse outside the saloon and step in with your hand already half on your pistol. Inside, there's a dozen men and twice as many secrets. All eyes flick to you, then flick away just as fast. You find the sheriff at the far table, old, moustache like a broom, scar down the left cheek and eyes that haven't trusted anyone since the rail company burned his brother's farm. "Thought you were dead," he says without looking up. "You're not the first to think that." He gestures to the seat across from him. "You sit." He pours whiskey into a glass and pushes it toward you. "So," he says, "you really brought him in once?" "I did." "And then he got out." You nod. He shakes his head. "Should have just shot him." "I tried." Now he looks up. "Why are you here?" You slide a paper across the table. Your plan, scribbled over 4 sleepless nights. Names, dates, supply routes, places Spider's building influence, who's likely to turn, who's already gone. "This is where we cut it off," you say. "Not just him. The lie, the whole thing." The sheriff reads in silence. At one point he whistles low. At another he mutters, "That son of a bitch!" When he finishes, he leans back and exhales like he's been punched in the lungs. "You're talking war," he says. "No," you reply. "He is. I'm just calling it by its name." For the next 3 days, you recruit. Quietly, carefully. You don't need numbers. You need proof. You need men with good names and bad tempers. People the town still respect, but who are mean enough to hold the line when the bullets start flying. A preacher named Mallory. 2 sisters who run a freight company and shoot straighter than any man you've known. A blacksmith from the north who lost everything to land fraud and carries iron in both fists. A few former soldiers. 1 reluctant banker. You form a kind of pact, not an army, a mirror. Because the only thing that can kill a myth is another one just as big. You call yourselves the Iron Circuit. No badges, no oaths, just action. The plan is simple: expose Spider, not to the law, not to the newspapers, to his own people. They think he's Moses with a pistol. You're going to show them he's just another con man with a god complex and a body count. And to do that, you need bait. You send word, quiet and careful, to one of Spider's outpost lieutenants, a man named Reeves, who once rode with you years ago before he fell into Spider's sermons. You offer him immunity, a clean slate, money. He doesn't respond for 3 days. Then a note arrives, slipped under your door. Tomorrow, Devil's Lantern, alone. You ride out before dawn. Devil's Lantern is a dried riverbed tucked into a rocky basin, the kind of place used for ambushes and bad decisions. You arrive an hour early, climb a bluff above the meeting spot and settle in with your rifle across your lap. Reeves shows up late. He comes alone, but he's got that jittery way of moving that tells you he's not alone for long. He carries a letter in his hand. White paper, folded, sealed in red wax. You come down slow, hands visible. "Reeves," you say. "Didn't think I'd see you again," he says, eyes flicking to the cliffs. "You see him?" you ask. Reeves shakes his head. Spider doesn't show. He sends. He holds out the letter. You take it, break the seal. Inside is a single sentence, written in that smooth, dangerous script. "I'll let them decide." Below it, coordinates. You look up. Reeves is already walking away. You don't stop him. Because you know what this is. Spider's staging a trial, not a gunfight, not a shootout, but a trial, of you. He's inviting his people, his free state, to witness what he thinks will be your final humiliation, to make you a lesson, to erase your name from the story entirely and crown himself as the only voice left standing. You smile, because it means he's nervous. You've become a crack in his perfect narrative, and now he wants to patch it in front of an audience. You return to Red Hollow and gather the iron circuit. Lay out the coordinates. We walk into this smart, you say. We get him talking. We pull the mask off. Let them see what we already know. One of the sisters loads her shotgun. And if that doesn't work, then we pull the whole damn tent down around him. The trial is set for 5 days from now. You spend the last 4 preparing. Ammo, maps, words. You won't just be fighting for your life. You'll be fighting for the truth. And maybe, if the wind's with you, for the soul of the West itself. You wake up on the morning of the trial with that familiar tightness in your chest. The kind that crawls in just beneath your ribs and refuses to let go. It's not fear. Not exactly. It's more like your body remembering what it's like to be hunted. To step into a clearing and know the rifles are already pointed at you. But this time, it's different. This time, you're not walking into an ambush. You're walking onto a stage. The coordinates Spider sent lead to a wide, cracked plain, outside a dried-up settlement called Hollow Junction, where the wind cuts hard and everything smells faintly of ash and iron. You ride in with the iron circuit just after dawn, a tight formation of riders moving like they've done this before, because most of them have. Mallory carries a cross strapped to his saddle, the sisters wear revolvers low on their hips, and the blacksmith, Hobbs, is chewing tobacco like it's the only thing keeping him from setting the whole world on fire. You see the gathering from a mile out, hundreds, maybe more, men, women, even children. Wagons circled like wagons always are, makeshift banners hung from tree limbs and mining tools. Some folks are dressed like farmers, others like soldiers. Most wear the X in a circle stitched or painted somewhere on their clothes. Spider's people, his believers, you dismount at the edge of the field. There's a silence that rolls through the crowd like a hush in a church. All eyes turn toward you. Some know your face, others just know the legend. The hunter, the man who brought Spider in once and might be the only one stupid enough to try it again. Spider waits at the centre of it all, standing on a low wooden platform that someone's clearly spent time building. He's dressed in black this time, but not for mourning, for show. His coat hangs long, his boots are polished, and his hands are bare, bandages gone. He looks healthy, clean, dangerous. Beside him stands a woman you don't recognise. Tall, silver hair braided tight, rifle across her back. Probably his second now. His lieutenant. His insurance policy. You walk to the platform with the circuit behind you. Spider raises a hand, just a gesture, no words, and the crowd quiets. Not a cough, not a whisper. He speaks first. Before you stands the man who chased me, he says, voice rising clear and calm, who followed me from canyon to canyon, bloodied his boots and his conscience in the name of a system that forgot him the moment it used him. He looks at you. I offer him no chains, no gallows, only the truth, for all of you to hear. You step up. The wood creaks under your weight. Glad to see your flair for drama hasn't dulled, you say. A few chuckles ripple through the crowd, but most are waiting, listening. You take a breath. Callahan talks about truth, you begin. Let's start with one. I've been chasing this man for months, and in that time, I've seen him blow up outposts, burn towns, execute lawmen, and fill graveyards with people too poor to pick a side. Murmurs. You press forward. I've read the journals he left behind. His plans, his alliances, the weapons he stole from federal caches, the propaganda he plants in border towns. This isn't about justice. It's about power. He's not here to build a nation. He's here to wear a crown. Spider raises a hand. May I respond? You nod. He steps forward. And I've seen this man storm camps, drag men from beds and leave others hanging in the wind, he says. He's worked for sheriffs who took land from widows, rail barons who buried rivers in poison. And yet, he calls himself justice. You bite back the urge to shoot him right there. Instead, you take another step closer. Lower your voice. Make them lean in. You say I'm a weapon, you say. And maybe I am. But I don't lie to the people holding the bullets. You turn to the crowd. Ask yourselves, what happens when someone disagrees with Spider Callahan? What happens when they want to leave? What happens when a town says no thanks? You point to the brand on your side, the scar that's never fully healed. Ask the marshals hanged in Denton Fork, the preacher who questioned his sermon and ended up dead behind a barn. Ask his own followers who tried to leave and didn't make it a mile. There's a shift now, a tremor in the silence. Spider sees it too. He moves fast, like a man who's losing the room. We're at war, he says louder, and war means sacrifice. You can't cry over a few broken eggs when you're making a meal big enough to feed the hungry. Someone in the crowd flinches. You step toward him, close enough to see the sweat now. But it's not your eggs, is it, Spider? It's always someone else who bleeds. You reach into your coat, the circuit tenses, but you're not pulling a gun. You pull a letter, written by Reeves. You read aloud. In his own words, you say, Spider ordered the execution of a man named Barker for questioning tactics, ordered his own men to spread false rumours about federal massacres, ordered farms burned to keep the people angry. You toss the letter at his feet. That's the man you follow. The crowd ripples now. Doubt. It's like watching a dam crack. Then the silver-haired woman steps forward, grabs Spider's arm, whispers something sharp in his ear. He jerks away. No, he snaps. They'll understand. They have to, but they don't. They've seen the myth too clearly now, seen the lines between truth and theatre. One man spits on the ground, another walks away, then a third. Spider watches it happen, stunned, not angry, just hollow. Like he didn't think the world could exist without believing him. You step down from the platform back to the circuit. You half expect bullets. Instead, the silence carries. Spider stands alone now, for the first time in months. Then Landry arrives. You didn't even hear the approach, just the thunder of hooves, the glint of badges, the bark of orders. Federal marshals swarm the crowd, shouting for peace, for dispersal, for surrender. Spider doesn't resist. He just lifts his hands and smiles, but it's smaller now. Tired, almost grateful, like the weight he carried where the crown or cross was finally too heavy. You and Landry don't speak until well after sunset. You sit together near the wagons, firelight crackling, horses tied off. He's in the wagon, Landry says. This time no trial, no parade. We hang him in the morning. Quiet. You nod. And for the first time in what feels like years, you feel the quiet, not as a warning, but as relief. Morning comes like a sigh, soft and slow and filled with the kind of pale light that doesn't want to commit to anything. Peace or chaos, mercy or reckoning. You're already awake when the sun touches the horizon. Didn't sleep, didn't try. You just sat there, staring at the fire until it burned down to nothing, flickering in rhythm with the heartbeat that's still somehow pulsing behind your ribs. You feel hollow, but not empty. Not like before. More like a well that's finally been drained, and all that's left is dust and echo. Spider Callahan is going to hang today. And this time there's no stage, no trial, no speeches. The law learned its lesson. You walk toward the wagon where he's being held, boots heavy with the weight of finality. There's a quiet to the camp this morning. Not silence exactly, but something more strained. Like every person present knows what's coming and doesn't quite know how to breathe around it. The iron circuit is scattered, some cleaning their weapons out of habit, some just staring into space. Mallory stands by a tree, muttering scripture he half believes. Hobbs is whittling a stick down to nothing. Landry waits by the wagon. His coat's buttoned up neat, but the circles under his eyes say he didn't sleep either. He nods to you once. Doesn't need to say anything. You both know how this ends. Spider sits inside the wagon, hands chained, back straight, eyes clear. Not defiant, not broken, just calm. There's no fight left in him. He doesn't bother trying to talk you out of it. Doesn't beg, doesn't curse. Instead, he looks up as you step into the light and gives you the smallest nod of respect, like two men shaking hands before a duel neither wants to win. You stand in the doorway a moment. I gave you every chance, you say. He smiles. No, you didn't. And I thank you for that. You could have been more. I was more, he says, to them. For a little while, you stare at him. You still think any of this was worth it? He shrugs, the chain clinking. History will lie about me. That's enough, you shake your head. It won't lie, you say. It'll forget. That one hits him. Not hard, but enough. Spider leans back against the wooden wall of the wagon, exhales slowly and closes his eyes. Then let's get it over with. The gallows are simple. 2 beams and a crossbar built the night before. They stand alone at the edge of Hollow Junction, a wind-bitten place where the scrub brush barely clings to the earth. There's no crowd, no press. Just a handful of lawmen, the circuit, and a single preacher brought in from a mining camp who reads the last rites in a voice barely louder than the wind. Spider walks under his own power, doesn't stumble, doesn't resist. You wonder for a second if he's playing the long game, if this is another story he's writing in his head. One where he becomes a martyr, a symbol, another spark. But you watch his face, you watch his eyes, and you realise no, he's done. Maybe not sorry, maybe not repentant, but done. Landry reads the sentence. Simple. Final. Then Spider turns to you, just before the hood goes over his head. You look tired, he says. You nod. I am. I hope you find peace. I hope you find nothing, you reply. The hangman pulls the lever. The trapdoor falls open, and just like that, Spider Callahan is no longer a man, just a name, just a story. After the body's buried, no ceremony, no marker, you ride out alone. The wind picks up, chasing your shadow across the land as if even it isn't sure where you're headed next. The towns start talking by the end of the week. Some say you executed a prophet. Others say a traitor. Most don't know what to believe. They're too busy trying to stay alive, trying to keep their farms from the bank and their daughters from the rail towns. You pass through Blister Ridge again. The flags are gone, the guards too. Just empty shacks and a few kids playing in the dust like they've already forgotten what stood here a month ago. You spend a few days riding aimlessly. Dodge Hollow, Twin Roost Snake's Eye. The old trail loops like a bad habit. You find yourself checking bounty boards without meaning to. Reading wanted posters like they're letters from old friends. But none of the names mean anything anymore. Not after Spider. One night, you stop at a canyon ridge and camp beneath the stars. There's no sound but the wind. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, you sleep. Real sleep. Dreamless. Deep. When you wake, the fire's burned low and the horizon's just beginning to soften with light. You stretch your legs, pack your gear, then ride toward the sunrise. Not because there's something waiting for you out there, but because there's nothing left behind you. You reach a town called Laramie Wash a week later. Quiet place. Soft folk. They've never heard of Spider Callahan, not really. Just rumours. A preacher who got too loud. A rebel who made trouble out west. You sit at the saloon, sip your coffee, and listen. The bartender asks where you're headed. You shrug. He asks your name. You just smile. Because maybe finally you're not that man anymore. Maybe the hunt is over. Maybe, just maybe, you survived it. So here you are, back where we started, not in a dusty saloon or on horseback, but in the quiet space after a long, long journey. You've seen the West for what it was. Brutal, beautiful, and absolutely mad. You've walked through the burned-out bones of towns, stared down the barrel of too many guns, and chased a man who was half ghost, half god, all the way to the edge of legend. Spider Callahan is gone now, hanged, buried. His name might still rattle around in the mouths of drifters and campfire storytellers, but the myth he built was broken in front of the very people who once believed in it. Not by bullets, not by the gallows, but by truth. You didn't come out of this clean. No one does. You saw too much, did too much. Maybe you understand now that there are no real heroes in the frontier, just survivors and stories. And you? You're both. You walked away. That's rare enough. Maybe you'll settle somewhere. Find a piece of land no one wants and let it teach you how to breathe again. Maybe you'll take up work that doesn't come with blood on the ledger. Or maybe you'll keep riding. Not for vengeance, not for justice, just for the quiet. The kind that only comes after the storm. So wherever you are, listener, whether it's 2 a.m. and raining in Chicago or midnight under desert stars in Arizona, take a breath. You made it. You're alive. And that's something Spider Callahan never quite figured out how to be. Thanks for riding with me. Sleep well and don't let the past ride too close.